I have.
So getting back to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
Well, that was abrupt.
Yeah.
Almost with no warning. Almost with no preparation. Almost with no backstage talk.
Almost.
How's it going, Metal?
I'm doing fine. I have a very busy night.
Oh, well,
in general.
yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. So, hey, Internet, it's Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. This was a strangely put together show because we didn't have anything booked out. Everybody was busy with stuff, and some people had gotten back to me about coming on, but no confirmations. So only the Metal showed up, the one person I did not expect to be here at all. So, oh hey, Dave says, if I were a tree, what kind of tree would I be? Metal, how about you? What kind of tree would you be if you were a tree?
If I were a tree, probably a fig tree.
A fig tree. Blossom
Yes, hopefully one that bears fruit.
Well, yeah. One would hope. Yeah, but fig trees bear fruit twice a year.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about them. So in my little town here in Scottsbluff, actually it's in the town just south of us in Gering, there is a fig tree. There are 2 fig trees in Nebraska because this is not the right climate for fig trees. And they will have to be in greenhouses, and one is in a greenhouse in Gering, and one is in a greenhouse in Omaha, I think. And so I've actually gotten to see a fig tree up close, and they're quite cool. But yeah, don't touch the leaves because they got a toxin on them.
And one of the reasons why I'd like to be a fig tree.
You don't want to be meddled with.
Yeah. Plus, also, I wouldn't have to change climates. I'm actually already in a proper climate for a fig tree, being down in Texas. So it's like I could just stay where I am.
There you go. You know what? If we're having a mellow show, I ought to throw a little music on in the background. Something a little. Oh no, I actually like this one better. Something a little smooth, jammy to go ahead and go on with our questions and answers. What do you think?
Little loungy,
maybe.
Yeah.
A little nighttime radio is the other one that I'm going for. Anyway, so I would like to be an oak, something that's got the strength, the pertinence, and something that's stubborn enough to not lose all of its leaves through winter, even if it's still in hibernation. That may be giving myself too much credit, though. Hey, Twitless is here.
Twitless, hey.
How's it going?
How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right. Well, I'm actually feeling a little icky.
You're feeling a little icky?
Yeah.
Well, you're icky. Metal is busy, and I'm absent-minded. So
sounds good.
So we got some questions from the chat. We're doing AMA today. And Dave has asked, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Oh, geez, I'm going to need a minute for that.
Okay, I'll let you go.
All right, that's an important question.
Dave said, I like to think I'd be a mulberry tree. I actually do appreciate that. There's right down the block on my way to work, there's a raspberry tree that just puts out fruit for a good third of the year. And I'll just grab some up as I go. So, hello, Evie. How's it going? And to answer Evie's question, how long is the beard now? My hand is about 4.5 inches. That's my glove size. So the beard's about 6.
Yeah, good half foot.
Yeah, there you go. It looks bigger. You got it from where, it starts up here and goes down to here, but the hairs themselves, the longest hairs are probably about 6 inches, give or take. So there you go.
I can tell you 2 trees I wouldn't want to be.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to be either a sycamore or a juniper tree because I am sick to death of them. I had a sycamore in front of my house for like 15 years.
Okay.
That was just awful because you know how like the sycamore, they make these like little balls instead of like pine cones or whatever for their spores, and then they just go everywhere during the springtime. And the city I grew up in was called Cedar Hill, which was covered in cedar grass and juniper trees, which that's where cedar wood comes from. And I'm just sick of both of those trees.
Well, and cedar and juniper, they're actually like cousins. So like junipers have berries and cedars have cones. So but they can interbreed.
Yeah.
And everything. So down around Scotts Bluff, everything has to do with where I live. There's a place called Cedar Canyon that's up in the hills, so the south, right? Part of the Wildcat Hills. There's a place called Cedar Canyon, and it used to be filled with cedar trees, but now all of this, not all, but like 90% of the cedar trees have been replaced with junipers through the years, where the junipers have just come in and out competed them.
Yeah.
And so now it's just thick with junipers, but it's still called cedar.
Well, because it's hard to tell if they're actually cousins or not, and more like siblings, because they seem to be breeds of the same plant. Like juniper is the plant and cedar is just a colloquial name for the other one, that have different breeding responses. Yeah, but the berries are like dominant and they just end up replacing the cones.
Yeah, and then like the thing is too is like cedars will have two kinds of cones. They've got staminate cones and I forgot the other name, but the pollen bearing and non-pollen bearing, bearing and pollen receiving cones. And junipers have they have the pollen bearing cones, but they don't have they have berries instead of the pollen receiving cones. So, yeah, that's like roses, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like dozens of things that are roses by technicality, like apples and oranges and strawberries, and cherries, I believe, are all roses.
So Evie says Tolkien would like this question, and that is 100% correct. That man had an almost unnatural fascination with trees.
There's nothing unnatural about a fascination with trees.
No, he took it almost to like love affair level.
See, and I can coming from Nebraska, the home of Arbor Day, I understand that because like we have hundreds of square miles in our state where trees just won't grow. So when you find one, it's kind of special.
I remember the Willow Tree Festival when I was out there.
Oh yeah,
it was like, hey, we have a willow tree. We're gonna have an entire event devoted to that.
Well, because at one point that was the only tree in Gordon. But they've got like 7 now. So I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
But
no, okay. So if I were a tree, I would probably, I'm just flying off the cuff here. I probably need to revise this answer, but I'm going to say ginkgo because I actually have one, or I had one when I was growing up, and they're really, really weird trees. I don't even know if they're like prehistoric dinosaur trees that didn't quite learn what being a tree is.
Well, and so. they're one of. There are just a handful, I think, like less than 7 trees that are not part of any other tree family, and ginkgo is one of them, where it's the only thing in its genus, it's the only thing in its family is a ginkgo tree. It doesn't have it can't crossbreed with any other trees. It's just itself. And that's it.
That weird thing that's just sitting off in the corner. That's me. There we go.
Yeah. I think it's fair. That seems fair. I have 3 trees.
They dump really weird leathery leaves that are a pain to rake.
They are delicious though.
Well, we're talking about the male or the female because, the one I had, I think was the male tree.
Yeah, they're bitter, but they're bitter, but they're not. They're tasty.
Yeah, there's also they're gendered trees. They're really weird. So we have the male tree, and apparently it pollinated all the trees within 100-mile radius or something.
Yeah, cedars and junipers are gendered as well.
Yeah,
we're just talking about that. But yeah, I have 3 trees. Well, first about the ginkgo, I used to work a landscaping crew some 20 years ago here in town, and we did some subcontracting for the city, and they had us put in a row of ginkgo trees in one of our grassy medians here in Bluffs. But for some reason, the local like hippies knew that it was what it was, and they had picked all of the leaves clean, meaning several people, so the trees didn't end up dying because they weren't being responsible harvesters. So, for shame, the bad hit.
Apparently, it's also important to oh crap, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So like apparently the female ginkgos apparently smell really bad or something. They're very strong.
That maybe.
Is it the fruit? Okay. And so it's like, so I enjoy. So I had the male tree. We didn't have to deal with that.
What a good riff off of a silly question. So I have 3 trees since we're talking about it. One is a Kentucky coffee tree, which does not make coffee, which is its own story, but I love it. It's my tree in my backyard, it's a lot of work to prune up because it's a weird tree. I've got an ash up front, and I have an oak. So those are my trees that I've got. So I had a maple tree, but it wasn't the right maple. It's because we have weird seasons here. We're in between zones, and so we have weird late frosts and weird early frosts. So our most maple trees won't survive in Scottsbluff. So
I have not inspected the tree in the front yard of my current residence, but given the fact that I keep stepping on acorns every single time that I go outside, I'm going to assume it's an oak tree.
Yeah, only oak trees have acorns. Although the crazy thing is, like, there's so many different kinds of oak trees.
Yeah, it's a small oak.
Tons of different kinds of tons of different kinds of acorns. So, here we go. It's the Mattriarchy. So the rule of the mat trees tonight. Also, Taylor's got tons of fun puns in the chat that I'm not going to put up on the screen.
But they're basically any word that normally ends in the sound tree.
Yeah. They are. So here's Eva says that she just found out Japanese maples make helicopter seats. Yeah. They used to have, when I was a kid in Oklahoma, there was tons of trees that gave off helicopter seats.
Yeah, they're fun to spin.
I was in Tulsa in green country, so there were just trees everywhere, right at the just off the foothills of the Ozarks out there. So, more crackers than you can shake a stick at. That's okay. They're my people. So, we have another question. Evie says, read any good books for fun recently? No. I have been only reading for school, and even a lot of the comics. I started reading the comic book adaptation of, I can't remember the name of it. It was for fun, but it was not fun. It was an Ayn Rand novel that got adapted into a graphic novel that has been super hard to read. Maybe I'll run upstairs later and fish it up because I still have it. I checked it out from the library, and I tried reading a bande dessinée of Valerian.
Bande dessinée?
Whatever.
Yeah.
You are
BDs,
correct,
as people say.
I got our library had the film version of the first volume of Valerian. I started reading that the other night, and I was just not impressed. It was fine. It just couldn't catch my interest. So, no, it wasn't Atlas Shrugged with Fountainhead. It was a different one.
So it's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah. The Fountainhead is a weird book, man. Like, I've not read Atlas Shrugged, but The Fountainhead was bizarre. I don't even know how to explain it, other than the fact that, like, Ayn Rand's, like, ideal man, like her concept of the objectivist ideal is just such an asshole.
Yeah. But like at least Fountainhead, as weird as it is, there is like a solid narrative there. While with like Atlas Shrugged, while there's a narrative buried in there, it's kind of just like a tome for how objectivism should work.
Yeah, I'll give you. That's part. I've seen the film adaptation, and I definitely got that.
So I made it through. Yeah, I haven't gotten to the part where she basically just gives you a philosophy lecture for like 100 pages. But I enjoy aspects of Rand's writing, and there are parts of it I don't enjoy as much. Evie's got a question for me in the chat.
Yeah.
Any rants about Cookie School assignments lately? Oh dear.
That's the wrong one. Here we go. Tony Sizzle is asking us to cheer. Which cheers to you, Tony. I don't have any whiskey going right now, just coffee. So drink one for me, man.
I mean, I do. I just don't know if we want to like derail things. Although it kind of seems to be the theme of the stream.
Yeah.
I read a book called Disability. Hold on, let me get the full title correct. It's like Death, Disability, and the Superhero. Yeah. Death, Disability, and the Superhero: The Silver Age and Beyond by a scholar named Jose Alanes. And I absolutely hated it. And mostly it was a lot of the PC political correct stuff, especially when it came to ableism, essentially. But suffice it to say that the author approaches comics with a very jaded kind of worldview. And that worldview just permeated the entire book. And the book was like, I think it was over 300 pages long. It was very long. So I'm reading this entire thing. It's very long. And, every so many pages, I have to read this guy basically make a snarky comment about how, Silver Age superheroes and superheroes in general, they pretty much are like quasi-fascist, right? And they're all kind of like contributing to the oppression of disabled people, right? Okay. I just it was just his whole attitude and the smarminess of the whole thing.
Quasi-fascist.
Oh yeah. That was like the introduction, and he kept on saying it over and over again, and I'm just like, piss off. I wrote piss off and other things in the margins multiple times, and his assumptions and where he ended up by psychoanalyzing superheroes and finding out where they went wrong in oppressing disabled people. Because and there's a quote he had in there where he said that disability is something that should not be denigrated. It should be celebrated. That we should in fact fight against anyone who would want to basically say that disability is something that shouldn't be a part of you. Which to me, I mean, I follow the argument to the point of, hey, you're disabled and your life still has value, sure. And if someone tries to tell you otherwise, because they brought up the ugliness laws where people who used to be like blind had to hide their disability. There's some old kind of archaic stuff that's been fought against. But now the fight for disabled rights includes fighting curbs and stairs. And and then of course, right, since Superman and superheroes represent not just ability but super ability, you could see why a book like this would really have some strong philosophical problems with what the aspirational aspect of what a superhero is.
It's just completely ignoring that there are plenty of superheroes with disabilities that are like blind or even mute, right?
No, they spent a long time talking about Daredevil. He was the one they liked, or the one he liked. But even then, it was like, well, here's all the places where Daredevil fails in doing enough.
But the other thing, where some superpowers, some abilities in themselves are also like double-edged swords that are disabilities, and that's showcased with a lot of superheroes. And
that was the other point the book made. So the book was basically saying, hey, superheroes have done this, but they've never. It pointed out the places like X-Men, where the abilities are a curse and a blessing, and then obviously some of the cases where. Like I said, superheroes with disabilities shine. But the problem is that the guy's worldview is so warped because, like I said, that key sentence, a disability is to be celebrated. When you have such a warped view of reality, it leads you into very weird places when you try to textually analyze an aspirational work. So they ended up analyzing a comic run called The Fly which was a Marvel series that had to do with a stuntman who didn't have superpowers. He's based on a real guy. And so the point was that this is a superhero who's actually based on a real person. He's a real guy, and he had a.
Sorry, Dave. Stop. We're talking about abilities that are also disabilities, like Spider-Man's Harry Bones.
Gosh,
that's terrible, Dave. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. Come on, man. So anyway, The Fly. Sorry.
Yeah. So like The Fly was he was kind of like a real person. He was a real person, and he injured himself doing an Evel Knievel stunt, and they kind of reconstructed him a bit with a lot of metal. Speaking of metal, the book was kind of very atypical and didn't do a lot of typical superhero stuff. But so Dave says The Human Fly. I have some of those. Yeah, exactly. So this was what the guy was talking about. And because the guy's such a warped worldview, he ends up talking about, this is a great example of a superhero who is disabled and is not following the typical narratives of showing a disability is something that has to be overcome. Because that was another one of the guy's windmills he was tilting at. So the problem is that when you have such a warped worldview on reality and on ability and disability, it leads you to saying something like, well, unfortunately, the human fly ended up rescuing a lot of disabled kids. And when you say a sentence like that, unfortunately, the human fly ended up saving a bunch of disabled kids, because the way he sees it, if you're rescuing disabled kids, what you're saying is that the disabled kids need to be saved, which therefore undermines their agency and blah, 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 postmodernism crap. And
you don't have a whole lot of agency when somebody's got a gun to your head.
Well, again, do you see
when Mount Vesuvius is popping off?
When you have that warped worldview, it leads you to ending up at those places. You end up at those conclusions. It's ridiculous. And like I said, this entire book was filled with that. So it was, and like I said, on top of all of that, I had to deal with this guy who had this just smarmy attitude. So like he's an academic, but every so many pages he said things like, listen to this, look at this ludicrous example of a superhero story and the ridiculous writing. And then of course, guess what his example of good writing was?
Probably nothing good.
It was Alan Moore in Watchmen, of course. And which contributes to this other narrative that I hate in comic book academia, which is the idea that comics were stupid things until Alan Moore and Frank Miller and Art Spiegelman in 1986 came together, and that's when the comic book grew up. That's when they became worth a darn. And that's just it's a very ageist argument if you think about it. A very presentist.
So here's presentist. I like it. Oh, Evie thought they were going to say Mouse. They did. They named Spiegelman. Although Spiegelman started Mouse in the 70s, so does that really count? And I think
1986 I think was when it was formally one of them came.
The first volume. Of Mouse
1986 was like this big year because Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and Mouse all kind of came out in published form or something in that year. So.
But here's the thing I want to go back to about comics growing up. If you've read any of the and maybe I'm the only one who has but the little girl targeted Aquaman from the late 50s, early 60s. Right?
Oh, yes, the Aquaman that you were obsessed with.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's Aquaman that was, they realized that it was mostly little girls that were writing it, so they leaned into it with Mira and with Atlantis and with, giant seahorses and all this kind of stuff. And they start telling these stories, complex stories about societal position and about duty and relationships and about maturity and commitment and heroism, but dressed in little girls' clothing, right? You're saying they were.
Well, it's a perfect one for it too, because like his namesake, he is basically just a C variant of the knight in shining armor.
Exactly, and so it was done in a way that little boys would still read it, but little girls would. That was their major focus, and so they're telling these action stories that are also romance stories that are also dealing with complex ideas that are boiled down to a 7-year-old girl audience. I mean, when I picked up on that, I was like, oh my god, it's like they just like I suddenly, I mean, like, so much about coming to that time frame. They were talking about serious issues to an audience that was just beginning to be able to understand it. It was just the Aquaman, the main Aquaman series. There wasn't it had been when it had its solo title and in More Fun just before that. So yeah.
So what does that have to do with disability? I'm sorry.
No, it's just one of those things where, like, comics there was already maturity going on among
I see what you mean.
and creators, because they were dealing with mature ideas, and addressing those to audiences that were learning to deal in those realms. So there was already maturity that went in on it. It just wasn't bitter and jaded in the way they were approaching those things.
Oh yeah, like and I remember, like, during our after stream when we talked about Mouse, and we pulled up some quotes from Art Spiegelman, and I even found some other ones, some contemporary interviews when Mouse was coming out. And golly day, Art really, at the time, and he still does, I think, maybe not as much, but he definitely still, I think, is influenced by this worldview today. His very dark, pessimistic, cynical, nihilistic way of looking at things. And he kind of has this, like, guttural reaction every time something is, either sentimental or positive or not dark enough, maybe, I don't know. But he kind of ends up saying something about how, when he made Mouse, he was like, he was the only story he could think of that was worth it to write a long story about, and that to write anything else would have been a stupid waste of time. And it's like, okay, that's nice art,
right? Which okay, I mean, that's a perfectly valid position to have as long as you can really answer why. See what I'm saying?
Well, no, his answer is why it was the Holocaust. Like that's his answer. Right. Yeah.
But why does the Holocaust? Okay, this is not to say it doesn't. But that still doesn't answer the question of why does the Holocaust matter, right?
Like, a better answer would be, it's my dad's story and it's close to my heart, so that's the only one. Like, if you have a personal reason on why it has that much weight, then you're going to be writing a better story.
If you're even going to take, the Whoopi Goldberg tack and talk about how we need to study the Holocaust because we need to study man's inhumanity to man. Like, humans have value. We keep violating that value. Why? I mean, let's drill down to discuss that, right? Like, those are all very valid things. But if you're like, well, nothing really matters except the Holocaust.
Well, okay. So basically, I would say Art would probably say it. Nothing matters since the Holocaust. The Holocaust proved that nothing matters. Essentially, I think that's probably closer to what his actual position.
Which is objectively wrong, but he could have that wrong opinion.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm just saying.
That would be it. Yeah.
And that's unfortunately, he's not alone in thinking that either. Like, you can there's, I think, a very rich history of people post that kind of hold that view towards the arts.
Heck, there have been worse things since the Holocaust.
Oh, there goes our monetization.
There definitely have, all of all the things that happened in Soviet Russia.
Yeah, there's that Great Leap Backwards.
Yeah, the whole China thing, all of Mao's Cultural Revolution, the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
So, anywho, there you go, Evie. There's my rant. I hope it.
So actually, I had a bigger problem, but which kind of ties into one of the things that he stated that you were quoting, and it was the whole, or like the mindset that disability is something to overcome. But if you're writing like a hero
back
story,
to Alana. Sorry, I thought we were going to trash Art Spiegelman some more.
no.
Okay.
We're going back to the original topic.
Jose Alana's got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Hasn't Art
Alana.
Spiegelman been trashed enough on this show?
Yeah. So
No,
the fact that disability shouldn't be something to overcome, but if you're writing a hero story, right, you're writing a character that needs to be developed in it. Everything is something that needs to be overcome, even things that seem positive on the surface, right? Because this is a character that needs to be developed. Their power, if they have a power, is something that needs to be overcome because they can't let it become the all of them. Their ego is something that needs to be overcome. Even their ideal needs to be overcome because their ideal from the start is probably wrong because they're an undeveloped person. And like that's just such a very weird view to have, that
Like,
something
that's
isn't needed to be overcome.
Right, that's an interesting thing to looking at like even like hero stories like in myth, like Cuchulainn, right? Like,
Yeah.
like in the Celtic archetype, it's important that every hero but one has failed at his Geisa, right? that it's important because like there's the intrinsic fallacy of we're all flawed. It doesn't matter if you're the hero or the farmer, everyone's flawed. And so like every mythic hero fails due to their own pride or whatever it is, right? They can't live up to it. And that's an important message that's folded into those legends. And so that there is something outside of, even though Cuchulainn was the ideal, he still failed to live up to the ideal.
Shout out to chat. Tony Sizzle's in chat. Good to see you. And Eagle43, good to see you as well. We're AMAing.
My boy
If you have
Eagle.
any questions, throw them at us. We're just kind of freestyling a bit today. Yeah, this is the book I was mentioning, and you could almost tell what the author thinks about the subject material just by you looking at the cover.
Although that Mr. Fantastic, having lost control of his stretchiness, is hilarious.
Yeah. So like this was from an art installation, and it's a little funny when you think about it. But let me see if I can find anything here. University Press of Mississippi, which is a very popular academic press for comic book scholarship. But
which is weird, right?
Mississippi, yeah, it is. But they're the ones who do a lot of it.
Yeah, I cited them on that Who Killed the Golden Age. There was a really good book that was just released in 2020. I can't remember the name of the book, but they were the publisher, and I was weirded out by it because I didn't know they'd publish other comic stuff. I was just like, well, that's strange.
Yeah. So the idea of the super crypt is one of the things that he was talking about early on there.
That's super sensitive. I'm glad they used that term.
Yeah, so the idea here is because there's real life examples of kind of the stuff that he's complaining about. So whenever you see a story about a disabled person who's like competing in a marathon, right, and they have like metal legs and they've overcome their like amputated limbs. A lot of people in the disabled community, apparently, not all, but there are some who look at those aspirational stories and they hate them, and they say, you are basically, kind of giving us other normal disabled people a bad name. You're implying that we're not trying hard enough, or that we should overcome our disability because you have. And we need less of those narratives where you're working so hard to please normative. I'm starting to get queasy as I repackage this stuff that I've read that I hate, that just I find so anathema. But this is what they say. And what this author is kind of talking about.
This is why we need Marm here, because he can recite all of this postmodern language without it even like churning his stomach at all, just because he's been so enveloped in it for so long.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I've been enveloped for a very long time as well. It's just I've never overcome my gag reflex.
There's two sides of that. One is that Marm like dove deep and then got out.
Yeah,
like worked at a big box store to cleanse his palate, right? and Twitless here, he decided, I guess if I'm already in the sewer,
just wade in it.
Jack off to the side.
So like this show is partly how I purge, how I deal. But yeah, so the whole idea of like, this person who's overcome their disability, what they're doing is they're actually contributing to the normative narrative, and we need to fight against that. And obviously superhero narratives, because they go even further than that, they almost make normalcy into a kind of disability. They're basically super guilty. So yeah.
So we've got a couple of things from the chat to go ahead and go over quick. First of all, Taylor says, like, this is the note on the screen, if nothing matters with the Holocaust, then did Mouse not ruin comics? I'm not going to justify that with an actual response. Evie says, forgive me if you already said this, but is the author themselves disabled?
I do not believe so. Other than the obvious, disability in the head.
Yeah.
And Mrs. H has shown up. Thanks for showing up to nag you to ship her Red Rooster.
Okay, so I might be able. Well, if you really want it, I actually have the Walmart issues. So I am very willing to take all 3 Walmart issues and mail them to you, but we'll do an exchange. So and obviously, if you've already done this, then then kudos. But I'm thinking we could do a kind of exchange with that. You buy the first hard copy of Omega Girl, and then I will ship you the 3 Walmart issues I have of Red Rooster. I think sounds like a bargain to me.
So I guess speaking of Red Rooster, I guess Mitch, I overheard a rumor that Mitch announced that they're releasing the 2nd season of Red Rooster sometime 2023 or something.
I interviewed him actually on Well Red's channel a bit, and him and Kelsey Shannon. So, by the way, Kelsey is probably one of my.
Got a deal.
Okay, awesome. All right, we'll talk. We could talk in DMs or something. Kelsey, by the way, is one of the best creators to talk to in person, like who's had experience with mainstream, I guess. Very chill guy, takes criticism like a champ, and like grateful. Like we reviewed his Nora's saga, and he was I just got to give him props because he hopped on. He was like, "Hey, I really appreciate you guys doing this," and he thanked us for even the criticisms that we made. So Kelsey Shannon, at least from what I've seen, cool dude. At least when you're talking to him. But we talked to Mitch as well, and he did say something. It was so funny because I remember one of the things I mentioned. I was like, "You hit us really hard with the dog dying on like the first page." I was like, "Is he gonna get another dog?" Because that was too much. And I think he said something about either I forget what the dog's name is, but he said the dog returns or something. So I don't know if he's getting a new dog or if they're gonna bring the dead dog back to life. But
yeah, the death of the dog is the last thing that matters in that comic. So everything after that just has no impact at all. It's such a piece of crap. I still can't get over how horrible that thing was. I'm willing. I think a lot of it matters depending on what your expectations were, because I did not follow the project. It's when I walked into it, I was expecting a comic that wasn't a steaming pile of crap.
Dave says it's Bandit. Yeah. Bandit's gonna, I think, return in some form. So that was the question that I asked.
I'm
the only fan that I'm interested in drives a Trans Am. Am I right, Dave?
I'm just glad I never had an interest. I still don't. Like, even seeing the story, just never got an interest in this story. It just wasn't that captivating from like the Kickstarter marketing all the way to now.
Again, I think that I really understand why Reese feels betrayed, because like if you followed it, and I prompted Mitch on this a little bit because Mitch is obviously used to getting so much criticism and then some downright toxicity from people that I didn't want to just heap on. So
he openly accused Doug Ernst of engaging in corporate espionage. So yeah, I imagine he might get some toxicity after that.
Not from Doug Ernst. The toxicity he tended to get were people who would just haunt him for years afterwards and never let him learn from his mistakes.
I'm just saying, if you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. That's what happens.
I don't see how making one false accusation justifies being.
It wasn't one. It was about a year's worth of false accusations.
I don't.
It was. I
don't think he accused Doug Ernst. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think he accused Doug Ernst of counterespionage for an entire year.
Well, okay. I deleted all of my. I deleted all of my my receipts on all that stuff because I needed to clear my headspace.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah. It was a lot.
But sorry, you were saying something about him coming out with a new one.
Yeah. I heard through the grapevine that the 4, 5, 6 was supposed to be released like soon. So people that liked it hopefully get the rest of the story, which I guess he's going to go ahead and finish out his Watchmen, a little clone, or maybe rise to the level of T-Bird and Throttle.
So when I asked him about it. And again, I really can't say anything about it until I see the finished story. Like I said, one of my kind of open-ended criticisms was I feel like we got 3 issues of a prologue, and it's hard for me to judge a whole story based on a prologue, but all we have is a prologue, and that's something you can critique on its own. But when I kind of prompt him on it in another stream, he implied to me that he sees this story as the way he sees it. So I'm not saying that this is the story that we got, but the way he sees it is he sees a story where he takes a hero and kind of brings him low so that he can build him back up. That's the story that he sees that he's telling. So like I said, proof's in the pudding. We'll see how he delivers on that.
To rehash my previous statements, if we'd seen a hero, that would have been something to start with, and then if we'd seen any reason that he actually had been brought low, that would have been something to start with. I'm saying Josh Turner, I think it is, with T-Bird and Throttle, he does that in 40 pages. It's you already see the reconstruction beginning at the end of the first issue. It's a superior book. I feel the art is different but equally as good. Sure. Mitch and Betty's art is just it's next level.
It's good stuff. Yeah,
it's great stuff.
Although I'll say like Elizabeth's coloring, like I said, does a lot of lifting. Like one of the main pieces of feedback that I would give to him is I'm trying to remember if I said this. I was like, keep her on colors. Don't change colorists because that coloring is really a huge draw.
Yeah, they have a language together, so they understand where each other's going for.
Dave says so. Basically, Rocky 2.
Yeah.
But without Rocky 1.
Yes.
And Taylor says, that's how I like to do things. Well, guys, you need to check out Red Rooster then. Sounds like you guys are exactly who this story's for. Definitely it's not Reese.
It was pitched in a way that was for me. It was the idea that this is the return of the aspirational hero, the glory of the golden age. Reborn.
So he did mention that. He did mention
but once again, like you don't see any of that. Well, even before the fall, everything.
I'm not saying you're gonna like this, but the whole idea that he set up the idea that's gonna be aspirational only to kind of like subvert that was very intentional. So like he was like, oh no,
obviously,
I wanted to set that up that way, and I wanted to kind of like lead people into thinking it was going to be X when in fact it was Y. So,
are you saying that you've read a Grant Morrison comic before? Ooh.
So to me, I think that a critique that I would offer is I think there's a huge conflict with the marketing then, because the book was even marketed to be for children. You see some of the pictures of like, here's little 6-year-old Johnny with his Red Rooster book, and I'm like, that's not who the intended actual audience is. But it's kind of being almost marketed as if it were. So I'm like, I really feel like there needs to be a revisiting of the marketing, because a 6-year-old is not going to be like, oh yeah, I want to read a dour takedown of 3 issues of the hero that I like on the cover of Red Rooster. They're not going to get it, and they're not going to like it.
A dour takedown of a fancy picture that somebody drew in their sketchbook in 2001.
Dave says, did you feel immersed in the time period? That was interesting to me. The setting, I did feel immersed in the setting. I don't know about the time period, but the setting was was good.
Yeah. So my take on the setting of it is it was like a Hallmark movie in terms of its setting, where all of the set pieces are pretty good, but everybody still talks like it's 2004. Like, they didn't really catch the verbal traits of people. You don't really buy that these people are actual historical characters. There doesn't seem to be a lot of that, but all of the ephemerma feels old.
I also like the fact that they set it in a very natural setting. The intention was to do the Batman in a barn, as opposed to the tried and true superhero in a metropolitan setting. This is definitely a backwoods superhero, and you definitely feel that. The sort of like, so much of it takes place in this kind of small backwoods town during a county fair. So you definitely get to experience the superhero in an environment you would typically not see him in.
And as long as you can get over the suspension of disbelief that Los Angeles is just a few hours away from rural Missouri.
Oh, is that it? Was that a goof or is that a thing?
No, I mean, it's not. They don't give you the impression of the length of time or distance from. They like hop in a biplane. They're like, here, we're going to fly back home to Missouri. Like, you're not going to get there with tank of fuel from
well,
LA.
Did you really need to see the scene of them filling up the gas tank?
No, but if you have a good map scene, or maybe mention that the filming house was in Texas, as there were some Texas filming stuff that was going on in the 40s. So you could have that was like outside of Hollywood stuff.
I feel like you're determined not to like this on any level.
No, I can simply find everything wrong with it in a project that has everything wrong. I don't see why that's such a hard thing. There are lots of things I liked about it, and I will say that they did return my money and sent me the book, so I can't,
And then you sent it to me.
Service goes for a book that I paid for and waited 3 years for. They were not stingy with it, and I did appreciate that. So I can't be mad about that part of it. But I also was so sickened by the entire process that I didn't want it in my house anymore, and sent it to someone. So
that was me. Yeah, that is me. I hope that Mitch learns from his mistakes and does better. That's really where I fall on the end of it. I am interested to see where the story ends up. I'm
perfectly okay with him simply learning from his mistakes, and that's sort of the end of the story.
Well, I mean,
see doing better. That's fine. Other people can already do better. Are doing better.
Well, actually, maybe
people
that's
he's fired are already doing better, so that's fine.
Maybe Red Rooster is this, because Red Rooster is kind of supposed to be the story of a guy who makes a bunch of mistakes and learns from them. So maybe that's the meta of it. I'm gonna learn from my mistakes just like my character is. I like that. I like that theme.
Do you think Red Rooster is actually a self-insert for Mitch?
See, now you're interested again.
No. I'm interested in insulting the man obliquely.
Oh, jeez.
He's just interested in putting out an idea that he's already had.
Are you just calling him a big chicken? I mean, come on.
Okay. No. Okay. And I would certainly accuse him of ripping off Chick-fil-A's marketing campaign.
I was joking when I said that. I just thought I almost troll asked him.
you're not the only one to have noticed that it's the exact same color.
I almost when I interviewed him, I wanted to just I almost said, "Hey Mitch, I got a troll question for you," and I wanted to ask it and just to have like fun with it, but I didn't know how he would take it, so I didn't ask it. But I came this close to saying, "Hey, have you talked to Chick-fil-A about doing some cross marketing, just for the funsies?" And if I talk to him again, I might ask him because
you never know if he might start smashing his head into his own keyboard again.
Oh jeez, that happened?
Hey, it's an AMA. We're not getting enough questions. We're having too much time talking about people we dislike. And I want to be clear for the chat. I don't want bad things to happen to Mitch. I just don't ever want to hear about him again.
Well, you brought him up.
Did I?
Yes. The only reason we're talking about him is you brought him up.
No, I didn't. Mrs. H brought him up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I didn't bring it up.
Dave in the chat says he's a giant chicken. He's not a man. He's a chicken. Boo.
Oh my gosh.
I was actually just talking about that recently.
Yeah. Thoughts on the Batman movie? Oh, hey, I haven't seen it.
Neither have I.
Footless, did you see it?
Nope.
Yep.
We're very poor.
So, I'll give you my take. I have negative interest in anything remotely like Hollywood movies. I actually would rather do anything than spend full ticket price to go see one of those schlock fests. And I don't believe that they will ever truly capture. And people were like, it's the first, finally the one great Batman movie. You're right. I think you're wrong. I think it's crap. I think it's trash. I don't think it can be anything but. I don't believe these producers and writers have any understanding of the subject material or care to. They're trying. They're just anything. It's fucking heartstrings to feed in an agenda, and I can't have any interest in all that crap. That said, I have heard that some of the detective stuff is well done. My boy went and saw it with some of his college buddies over the weekend, and he said it was a pretty decent detective story. So I'm not sure it's a Batman story. So he was thinking about that, and may have had an opinion last week. He's coming down to visit this weekend, so I'll probably pick his brain about that. The one
I have
thing,
a very low bar for it. My expectation is I'll probably like it slightly more than the Nolan trilogy, which I did not like at all.
I liked Batman Begins.
That was the most redeemable one for me.
Yeah, I went back
and I like Ledger's performance.
I really like
He's
The Dark
just
Knight.
Not playing the Joker.
And The Dark Knight isn't a Batman movie either. That's the other thing. Like, it took me a while to really realize it, but like, I just recently rewatched it, and like, it's not a Batman movie. It's barely a movie. It's sort of like if a plot hole could like play act as a movie. That's kind of what that is.
All right, I think that's a bit strong of a take, but we have more questions in the chat. The Dark Knight is art.
No.
Yeah, but so is apparently a banana stapled to the wall. So
yeah, that Banksy piece that was a shredder that turned on after the auction is more art than
hard disagree.
But back to the topic though. One of the things that is unforgivable that my boy was telling me was the thing is that they dust a piece of paper for fingerprints, which is not how you get a piece of fingerprints off of paper or porous surfaces. And if you can't get that right, there's not a chance in hell you're getting Batman right. So, like, that is an unforgivable mistake in a movie. That's supposed to be a detective movie.
I mean, it may be a mistake. I don't know if I would make the leap of logic.
I mean, that's like thinking that you're going to pull a fingerprint off of a piece of paper using graphite dust is equivalent to thinking that you can reconstruct, the riflings from inside of a shotgun from the pellets you pull out of a wall. I mean, that's like junior high, like the Bloodhound Gang. Am I the only one old enough to remember the Bloodhound Gang? It was a series of detective stories on
I know.
PBS. Yeah. That had better, more accurate detectiving than it happens in the movie. Like
if TV shows like NCIS can afford to have a forensics consultant on for the script writing. I'm sure a big budget movie like The Batman should have been able to get a forensics consultant on.
Oh, anyway, yeah, that gets me fired up. Okay, so let's get into the questions.
Yeah, we have a guilty pleasure questions.
So first,
what's a
let's go in the row. First, I got a question. Yep. What's a comic you love? That's all right. There's no reasons you should ever have liked it in a million years. Ooh. Okay. I have one, but I want somebody else to go first.
I'm gonna need a minute. That's a tough one.
Okay.
Forces of Good and Evil.
Dang.
Oh, come on. It's better in color. I really think it's better in color. Oh man. Major bummer was mine. There was a series, I think it was Accruity, in the late 90s that was like a Gen X slacker take on superheroes, where there's just this dude who doesn't want to do nothing with his life but work at a burger joint and pay bills, who's given superpowers by aliens by accident, and he ends up having to save the day repeatedly just because he happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and be super strong. And he wants nothing more than to get back to his slacker life, but the universe can't let him because he's the guy for the moment. And it's not heroic. The guy is not a good guy, but I still end up really enjoying it. So that's it for me.
I think my actual answer is probably Snot Girl, which was Brian Lee O'Malley's follow-up comic after he finished Scott Pilgrim. And this one he actually did like issue by issue instead of just creating graphic novels. And I think part of it is because it's the same art style and it has a lot of his same like humor and writing voice in there, but the actual story isn't that good. And the character isn't that likable even by the end, because at least like in Scott Pilgrim, all of the characters grow by the end of the graphic novels. It takes a long time of pushing them, but they all have character development and they're kind of likable by the end. And you start to pick up on these little human traits that make them redeemable along the way as they become likable. But like the more I read Snot Girl, it's like, I like this for some reason. And it might just be the fact that I'm already attached to the art and writing style of the person writing it, but it's really just not that good of a story.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, oh man, Reese is gonna hate me. So this is based on the reread. It's Kingdom Come, and the reason why is because I hated the author, and I hated the author so much I was loaded and ready to hate the book and wanted to hate the book. I walked in with everything dead set against me, liking it all. I don't like Mark Waid. I don't like how he treats indie comic book creators. I don't like how he treats people in general. I have problems with his social justice warrior isms. It's everything was stacked, and yet I got to the end of Kingdom Come and I was like, I kind of like this, and I wanted to hate it. So that's probably the best answer I have for that question.
Yeah, Kingdom Come, by the way, is ground zero for social justice comics. So it is.
That may be. I still think I still think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a trash film. It is.
Okay, we're gonna
the devil's epiglottis of comics.
We're gonna have
that may be it.
We're gonna have this debate again.
Guilty pleasure
round
comics.
3.
Guilty pleasure comics.
Oh jeez. Okay, I have an answer for this, but I don't know if I can say it. Weird romance manga I read.
Okay.
I'm just gonna leave it there.
That's fine. I think that sums it up really well.
Actually, one of mine is like a guilty pleasure is in there, and that's the long-running manga Boys Over Flowers, which is a shoujo. It's pretty good,
It's a great title, but what is it?
Okay, this is why it's a guilty pleasure. So it's a girl story, shoujo for young girls, teenage, and it's about a girl who has a poor family, but their family saves up so she can go to the rich school. Because what a lot of people don't understand about Japanese culture is that high school is not required. You can drop out, you can work at your parents' store or whatever, but most people still go to secondary school, and you pay for it. And there's like a low budget, basically government equivalent of public school that anybody can afford, even if you're poor. But everything's about like school choice. So you want to go to the better, more expensive schools. And her parents struggle. Like they live in a single bedroom apartment where she's the only one who has her own room, and her younger brother and parents sleep out in the like living room area and stuff like that, just so she can get enough sleep to go to high school. And they're like really struggling to let her go to this school. And very similar to most shoujo school comics, there are like 4 princes, or like the 4 hottest guys at the upper echelon of the school. And for some reason, it's very, very, I guess, Twilighty, Shades of Grey, way before those books came out. Everybody, like all 4 of them, want to get with this girl, and she has like a main romance with like the first one that she runs into, who's kind of like the loner of the 4 who never dates anyone, and they kind of have like that jerk with the heart of gold tsundere, like, you know, I don't actually like you type thing going on. But all 4 of them like her.
It's Spin Doctor's Two Princes, the comic.
Kind of.
Huh.
Somewhat. Except with 4 princes.
That's a dated music reference, people.
I was actually listening to that like last week.
Yeah,
that song never gets old.
This stuff is so good, but it's also so 1997. Even
yeah, like one of the most like memorable drum lines ever.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. There's actually both a drama in Japan and Korea. Like it's been adapted into live action multiple times. I actually think the Korean one did a better job of adapting it. I think maybe because they had a higher budget. But there is combat in there, because you can't have a manga without some form of combat. It's just not like this highly meticulous, like Dragon Ball style combat. The princes get into fights with each other in the halls and stuff like that, because you need something a little harder than just girl drama to really push these stories. But I don't know, it's one of those like really guilty pleasures, because while the overall story's pretty good, there's a lot of just slog through it, and it's like 30 volumes long, and a Japanese volume is like 200 pages.
Cool. So now that was just you that answered that, right, Metal?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll go next. Roberta Gregory's Naughty Bits, which is like an obscene underground comics. I think Fantagraphics published it. And it's painful to read, but it's also a really like raw and authentic. I don't know if it's autobiographical. It's not put up that way, but it's a picture into the life of a broken middle-aged woman who like squandered her whole life, and there's nothing left of her. She went through some trauma in her youth and just like got bitter about it, and so it ends up being the story of this older middle-aged woman just trying to claim some sort of agency in a life that's gone totally to crap. And it's supposed to be funny. There are moments where it's kind of funny, but it's so raw that it's like it's really like it's real. But I also wouldn't say that it's good. The art isn't necessarily good. The characters are not likable in any way. It's just really, really sad, but I'm also not at all sorry that I read it all. So And
Yeah.
so I
Well, see,
ran,
that's
like,
actually the problem of why I say it's good, but the one I said isn't actually good. None of the characters are likable, except maybe the family of the main character is likable because they're really sacrificing themselves and they're good-natured people. But like the girl is a little turd. All the boys are all turds, and they never really grow because it's a long-running series. They need them to stay mostly the same for a long time. And it's basically like a soap opera that takes place in a high school with the occasional fight breaking loose. And there's like, maybe her best friend is somewhat likable, but kind of in the like, I'm there for you girl kind of way. That's about it.
Well, I've got another one that's a little more mainstream. I really enjoy stuff that Jim Shooter creates, even when he's not at his top of form. So he did this one called this was like I think his second or third go at doing a comic book company, and this was like the final one, which is really sad, but he was defiant. He did one called Warriors of Plasm, and it's one of the ones that actually got him, I think, yeeted from the comic book industry because Marvel sued Defiant and said you're because the book was originally just called Plasm, I think, and Marvel came in and said, oh, your word plasm is too close. They did a trademark lawsuit, and they said your word plasm is too close to our character called Plasmer. So they sued and they lost. Marvel lost, which I'm very happy to hear, but the loss bankrupted Defiant. So it didn't matter.
As they probably knew it would.
Yeah, exactly. So Marvel literally basically just took out some of the competition.
Well, that's all.
By just
It was about sending a message. You can't do it to anybody else in the future. We took one for the team.
So I read Warriors of Plasm, partly because I was invested in. Jim Shooter responded to me on his blog once, so I was interested in some of that. And he's a cool guy when you talk, have exchanges with him. And so Warriors of Plasm is a very weird book. Let me see if I'll pull up an image of it, because it's just off the walls, and it's not Jim's best writing. Some of it feels rushed, but it's a weird biological horror take on the kind of superhero genre mixed with political intrigue. So yeah, exactly. It's actually, it's kind of interesting.
That actually reminds me of the Elementals comic that Bill Willingham wrote back in the '80s, which was it was more straight superhero, but it also had like this really interesting political intrigue angle to it.
Yeah, let me pull an image for you guys to take a look at.
So while you're doing that, I wanted to address one thing from the chat earlier. I did not mention Critical Blast was also commenting on the beard, and well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm probably gonna chop it here. It's one of these days coming up, but so far it's
wait until after Easter so you can do that Jesus role play.
I don't know. Okay. Warriors. I think you've shown me this cover before. I think so.
But yeah, so you could just tell like how just biologically gross this is, and it's like this weird alien world where everything is organic. All their technology is like goo based, and so it's that's starting to sound a lot like Naughty Bits.
Are you sure this isn't just Snot Girl?
I mean, it is quite snotty.
So in all of wait a second. So for each of our guilty pleasure picks, we've all suggested comics that involve a significant amount of fluid.
Okay, I'm not going to pursue that.
We're not going to discuss that anymore.
Any further. But the guy on the front he's one of the main characters, but he's not a good guy. He's responsible for creating the superheroes of the story, who end up being a little bit more traditional in their superhero-ness, at least in terms of their worldview. Like, we're going to do the right thing with our powers. But this guy is like, he's kind of evil, but the evil empire he works for is more evil than him, and took away like his beloved woman. So he kind of wants revenge, And so in a weird twisted way, he ends up being on the same side as the heroes, but he's not a good person. And so just some of the intrigue of it and some of the moral ambiguity with some of the characters, not all. And it's kind of cool when you have some moral ambiguity, but not like everyone being morally ambiguous. And so, like I said, it was a good read, and I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Because when you look at this as a typical superhero reader, you're like, what the hell am I looking at? This isn't going to be good. And like I said before, it's not Jim Shooter's strongest character writing in some places, but the concept is really interesting, and and the intrigue and so on, and the novelty of the crazy goo universe, it carries the book pretty well.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. I do kind of like having like a single like reverse villain anti-hero in a story, somebody who's doing the right things for all the wrong reasons.
All the wrong reasons, yeah.
People.
Yeah. That's definitely this guy.
So next question, how about Batman 88 or 89?
Are we talking about the comic or the movie?
No, I think the movie. I think we're talking. Okay. I mean, this is, I think, reflecting on the previous when Tony was asking about what our thoughts on the Batman were.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Oh, which I also wanted to mention that the Batmobile from that movie is very much like my favorite Batmobile, the Mean Machine from after the Cataclysm event.
Oh, I have one quick question. Can we change the music?
Oh, I guess. I'm really liking this book.
Yeah, it's chill.
It is, but I think a little variety. There we go.
New question music.
There we go. Perfect. I like it.
So, chat, let me know if the music is okay or if we should go back to the last one. But Batman 89, what are your thoughts on that? Their metal?
I really like the movie. I think it has a lot of flaws with it, as much as almost any Batman does at capturing Batman. I think it gets certain things right that other ones don't after it. It seems like the one that was trying to be Batman the most, it just failed to hit the mark in certain areas. And but the cinematography in it, a lot of the stills, if you were to just take them, actually look like they were shot to be like comic panels, like the way you would draw the angles of comic panels and stuff. So there's a lot of like solid attempts there, but there's also just way too many like Burtonisms in it that take it away from being Batman. It's probably my favorite of the live actions.
Well, and I think the first film had fewer Burtonisms than Batman Returns.
Oh no, yeah, I agree.
And I think that the success of Batman allowed Burton to have too much leeway. I mean, I still like Batman Returns a lot, but I think it allowed him to have too much leeway into Batman Returns. I think a little more studio control would have been good on that one. What about you, Twitless? Oh, he must have left.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I needed to sneeze. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And also, I was digging up an image from the Batman 89. They just came out with a Batman 89. I think it's a miniseries.
Yep.
I read the first few issues. It's been ages since I've seen those movies, so my memory of them is probably totally inaccurate. I've only watched like clips recently. When I was a kid, the 89 Batman film was not for me because it was too scary. The darkness of the film, and going back and watching them now, it's almost like comedic. But when I was like, I don't know, gosh, when did I watch those? I mean, I would have been a very small child when I first saw anything from that, 5, 6, or 7 or something. And so, like I said, it just wasn't for me at the time that it came out. And I think that colored my perception of the first two. And so I think around the time that Batman Forever came out, I was actually of the age that I could watch it and actually be like, okay, I can enjoy this for what it is, as opposed to going, oh my gosh, Joker is completely terrifying and traumatizing when you're a 6-year-old. By the time I was a little bit older, I was like, oh hey, Riddler's a bad guy, but I'm not like, he's not going to give me nightmares. So like I said, I think that
Also, Riddler was way less scary than the Joker.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying that, like, you know, I think it's comparable in their evil grins. And like I said, when you're a little itty bitty baby, that's just you
guys are so much younger than me. So Batman 89.
Yeah, I saw that in theaters too. I was just a baby, but I saw it in theaters.
Batman 89 was the movie, like the hype around that's what was the context for me rediscovering my childhood love of superheroes that led into me getting back into comics. So I got a lot of nostalgia for it. Mm-hmm. I used to have the VHS cassettes that I take down to the video room at college, at the dorms, and put on while I was working on homework. Started wearing out the tapes. I mean, I watched it a lot. So
that was me with Batman Begins. Batman Begins, I think I watched like 7 or 8 times in the theater.
Yeah, I saw it once in the theater because I wasn't rich. Okay. So
I wasn't rich either. I was a teenager who just who had working at Chick-fil-A. I could spend my money in a discretionary. I could waste it in a discretionary fashion.
Baby Twitless.
Babby Twitless. Yep.
Yeah.
Also, see, I never did that with a Batman movie. I saw Phantom Menace 6 times in the theaters, but only once did it ever come out of my family's budget. I just had so many friends that wanted to go see Star Wars Episode 1 that everybody just kept taking me to the theater.
And I think that's part of what happened with me with Batman Begins, because I didn't watch it by myself like 7 or 8 times. It was like I watched it with this group of friends, then this the youth group at church went and saw it, and then the Boy Scout troop went and saw it. So I ended up seeing it probably 4 or 5 times just by going with different people. But I mean, yeah.
So when it first came out, I was 11 when Batman 89 came out. So I actually didn't see it until a couple years later. Because some of the graphic violence that I was not sure that I wanted to watch a guy get fried to death, all that kind of stuff. What really struck me was about the what?
I was 3 years old when 89 came out. So
so I was, but when I did see it, it was one of those things where the cinematography was so authentic to the way the comic experience that I had already gotten into. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was really deep into comics, and like I said, the thing looked like a comic book in terms of the way it was laid out.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it the most.
The fight scenes were well choreographed enough to trick my eye into thinking that they were authentic as well. Mm-hmm. The technology was fun, and the Joker was. I mean, I don't know that anyone has done a better Joker. Cesar Romero's Joker definitely captured the Silver Age Joker perfectly.
I think each of them capture, and that's the cool part about, especially about Batman, certain superheroes where they have so many different iterations. And I think Batman and Joker, on the good side and the bad side, may be 2 of the most versatilely adapted characters in superhero books. They're definitely in the top echelon of them, because you have the 60s comedic Batman and comedic Joker. So there's a version of Batman for that. There's the cartoon that's taken slightly seriously with the Bruce Timm, animated version. There is a darker, more committed to social verisimilitude version with Nolan, but it's just there's a Batman for all seasons, and there's a Joker for all seasons. And so I think that different people have captured different aspects of that, whether it's the comedic clown part for the Joker or the violent psychopath version of it.
Even in the 66 series, even though the stakes were such that you knew that he was going to get out of it, there was serious menace. Had the Joker been serious and watchful and whatever, he would have killed Batman several times. So some of that has to do with the fact that the trope of the series is the villain sets up the death trap and then walks off to go laugh.
Right.
I would say that Jack's Joker, though, if you were to take the average of the different Jokers, he is the closest to the every Joker than anybody else is.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that's a fair statement.
He's channeling the different parts all at once.
Yeah.
Might be fair.
Because he definitely, when he's funny, but his funny is also scary. So,
And he can be brutal at people, too, at the same time. Like, he kills his own men for letting him down.
No, that scene, again, talk about traumatizing, that scene of the skeletonized thing, Reese, that you're talking about, that was one of the things that was like, this film is not for babby twitless. Like, it's terrifying.
Babby.
Or, like, he had his number one guy, he shoots him, and then he turns to somebody else, you're my number one guy. And it just literally passes the torch on, and you're like, you should be scared at that moment if he passes it to you. You're like, oh my God, I cannot mess up at all.
Right, and the level of menace that Jack was able to get through is every bit as menacing as Darth Vader, you know, in Return of the Jedi. I mean, Empire Strikes Back. Moving on, because we've got a backlog here, and we're losing people, but that's okay. Has there ever been a comic book movie you felt did the comic justice? Yes, The Rocketeer. Quite possibly the perfect comic book movie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Spider-Man 1.
Yeah.
At least from like plotting out a Spider narrative, I think Raimi really understood what made a Spider-Man story, even if he like tweaks some things for the big screen here and there.
Well, and I would agree too, even in the second Spider-Man movie, because one of the first, I was talking to a buddy of mine who did not like Spider-Man 2, and I said, what don't you like about it? And he's like, God, it's just like it's Peter Parker's crappy life. And I said, have you never read a Spider-Man
that's
comic?
literally Spider-Man.
that's yeah. He's like, yeah, but it's
that's why I didn't hate 3. 3 just had too many cooks.
So before we leave the Joker conversation too far in the past, I do have something to share from Super School, because we did a strip directly ripping off the Batman Joker mythos with our Nightman and Criminal Clown. Nightman actually became a recurring thing for our strips. We would do a lot of these things at night whenever Brad's going to bed, and then Nightman will have some crazy adventure with some goofy villain. And Taylor always gets mad at me because I always like make the final panel some crazy death trap or something insane happening. He has to draw all this new stuff from scratch. But yeah, check out Nightman in Super Schooled. Okay, back to Spider-Man, and so I actually like Spider-Man 2 more than Spider-Man 1 in terms of enjoyment. I just love Dr. Octopus, but I think there was something magical about Spider-Man 1, and some of that magic is not just the film, but the fact of historically what that film represented when it came out. Because now that we're in the post MCU world where there's a superhero film every 5 seconds, Spider-Man was a rare thing. We didn't get that many superhero films, and the ones that we got were kind of, they were either really campy or, in some cases.
That's what, because there was before Spider-Man came out, between Batman Forever and X-Men, pretty much, but pretty much X-Men, but definitely Spider-Man. There was a whole slew of superhero and comic book movies, but most of them weren't very good.
That's what I'm saying. Like
you had there was tons though. There was Blade.
No one counts.
I'm sorry. Blade was really good. The Fantastic Four one that they had in there was not.
Oh,
very
I
good.
love Blade.
I misspoke. The Phantom was what I was thinking of. The Phantom.
The Phantom was awful.
But I mean, it had a lot of good elements in it. The cast was good, but they weren't given good things to say, and the setting was wrong. It should have been set in the jungle. It should have been a jungle adventure. Not
let me rephrase, because as opposed to comic book, I'll say mainstream superhero films. We got them. They weren't a ton of them, and like I said, Phantom and Shadow are more. I would classify them more in the pulp hero category. They do count. If we're being technical, but for most
and Shadow
people,
was 2/3 a good movie.
But for many people,
it had
they
potential.
don't count as much.
They had got Alec Baldwin.
Yeah. Well, there was also like comic movies that most people, unless you were an average comic guy, didn't even know they came from comics.
Exactly. Yeah.
And some of them had almost nothing to do with what you're used to. Like Men in Black, great movie.
Right.
Kind of like the comics.
Yeah. So like the way I'm definitely framing this question is basically the mainstream superhero. I recognize that character from comic books and so on. And like I said, there wasn't a ton of those. Definitely not like we have now. And they definitely, I think they were more spaced out. Like we'd get one it wasn't like we were getting one every single 5 seconds. And so it was an event when one did come out. And when one came out that was as good as Spider-Man 1, like I said, it was a special moment in cinema history for a lot of people. And because it was a really good movie. And it was a really good superhero movie. And the special effects had finally caught up enough so that you could, at least at the time, believably, do some of the things that some of these characters can do without
I think a big thing that people forget is it's a very uplifting movie about New York that came out immediately after one of the most tragic things to happen to New York.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. So historically, very definitely historically, it played a special role. And looking back on it, I think it's because it came out when it did. I think that played a big role in its reception and the way I remember it, especially. Because now, like, Spider-Man movies come out so often now that it's just like I miss one and I go, oh, I missed the recent Spider-Man film. I don't really,
Well, it's also hurt that they exist within a paradigm of crap. So
I will say, I caught the scene, and I vehemently disagree with some of the what I would say slimy practices of what they're doing in No Way Home, but the scene where the new version of Spider-Man, the Tom Holland version, is like trying to vengefully kill Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, and Sam Raimi steps in and prevents him from doing so and doesn't say anything, but just looks at him, just maintains eye contact. And you literally have this, like, one of the best versions of Spider-Man to grace film, just kind of like visually communicating, just through his presence and eye contact, this, the aspiration. That was a very effectively executed scene or moment. And I was like,
especially with the weight that he knows the pain of being responsible for the death of his. Like, he knows what it's like already, yeah.
And again, as much as I'm like, man, this is a cheap cash-in movie, I was like, dang, this is an effective moment. This is well done. I can't deny it. Like, that was very
and you
well
mean
done.
Tobey Maguire, you misspoke and said Raimi because we were talking about his series.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I meant Tobey Maguire.
Sam Raimi comes off on
exactly.
He's
that would have been way better, honestly. I'd actually probably pay to go see that movie.
Whoops.
I
Maguire,
have no idea. I have not seen any of those. I don't care to see any of those.
Just watch the clip. It's like they have it on YouTube. It's a good moment.
I have negative interest. I'm at the point of like, so would you choose between bodily mutilation and watching a Marvel movie? And I'm like, yeah, I can stand some more bodily mutilation. That's cool.
Did the three ever point at each other? I didn't watch the whole film. Like I said, I just saw that.
Oh, the meme.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have. I haven't watched a Marvel movie since my kid drugged me to see Endgame, and that's just such a steaming pile. There is no.
Okay. I saw Black Widow because my best friend wanted to go to the movies, and I love my best friend more than I love my principle of not seeing Disney movies. So I went and saw Black Widow, and it's whatever your problems with Endgame were. I think Black Widow was a worse movie in a lot of ways.
Endgame was such a horrible movie. It made me unlike good movies. Like I haven't gone back and watched any of the good Marvel movies since then.
Yeah, it retroactively tarnished them.
Retroactively tarnished.
So Black
Widow
Widow
actually reached through time and took like the Captain America, the first Avenger, and like turned it into a piece of shit.
So Black
Like,
Widow
that's how
kind of
bad Endgame was. It's infused with the Time Stone in such a way that it actually makes previous movies worse.
So Black Widow kind of ends up doing that at the same time because it's a flashback film, and it's again, I'm telling you, for as bad as you think Endgame may have been, at least there's not a Dr. Mengele character who gets to walk off into the sunset with a "ba-da-da" family.
Well, that's because of Endgame. It's gone back into time and screwed everything up.
Because like that's what happens in Black Widow. Her adopted or what mother or whoever character is actually responsible for the mutilation of like thousands of women, and she goes, "No, I'm going to betray my boss, and it's all good now, right?"
Well, that's
like,
so she's the Democrat Party. Is that what we're hearing here?
Oh my gosh!
The mutilation of millions of women. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I said thousands. I said thousands. Okay, so you're gonna get the scale of the numbers right.
Scale the numbers right. So Taylor says in Nolan's defense, he never set out to make a superhero movie. Then why is Batman in it? Mrs. H asked. I think she may have left. Mrs. H asked, "What about Lego Batman?"
That one was okay. I was not the biggest fan of the. It does a lot of things really well, and I think its version of Batman I really like. I think the plot of it being a story where it's like it's almost like a breakup between Joker and Batman being kind of part of the crux of that story, and I thought that was a little lame and silly. I'm sorry, I should re-clarify. It's Lego Batman, so it is going to be silly. But I thought that the crux of the story being like Batman and Joker are breaking up, like they're a couple, like an old married couple. That was a bridge too far for me personally. That's about as far as I can say that.
I enjoyed it. Only within the context of it, it's not really a Batman movie. It's the Batman character from the Lego movie played by Will Arnett. So it's basically, and one of the great lost opportunities that movie had is they don't have Batman at any minute say, "I've made a huge mistake."
Yeah. But I did like that it was basically Arrested Development because Robin was Michael Cera. It was just them together again.
Yeah.
A lot of projects end up being, because that's what Archer, if you watch this show Archer is just Arrested Development in cartoon form.
Yeah,
more or less. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's a certain infantile aspect of Hollywood that's kind of the only good thing they can churn out of something that makes fun of themselves.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's
the
one
only
of the
thing they're
reasons
aware of is their own navels.
I really like Lego Batman. Like, it's not just enjoyment. I really like that movie, and I don't even just see it as the Batman that was in the Lego movie, because that character specifically embodies a like satirical form of everything I have found wrong with Batman for like the last 2 decades. Right, and it's just like there, and they do such a good job of basically making fun of and pointing out everything I've been complaining about that it's almost like catharsis to watch Lego Batman.
I could see that. So the other thing, Lego Batman. Taylor loved Lego Batman. I'm just gonna put this up there, Evie. I'm not gonna talk this through. Dark Knight versus Duct Tape Banana, which is better art? I'm tempted to go back to that, but I want to get further on in the thing here. From way previous, when I was talking about the Bloodhound Gang, Tony had mentioned the fucking Buttercreamer Gang next. I loved those novels when I was a child. So if you guys don't know what that is, it is a series of novels that were written, I think, in the 50s. About, and they're like some sort of like obscure rural America about a bunch of kids who would churn butter for local widows, and they ended up inspiring like progressions of kids that would go around helping their community in different ways, and running into unique problems and having to use ingenuity and sincerity to solve their community's problems. And I read the hell out of those when I was little. So they made a couple of film adaptations, like feature films for families and stuff too, but I don't think it even quite captured because the child actors don't act like children too often. The really good ones are hard to come by. You said there was an hour-long essay that says that Lego Batman movie is gay, and hate that someone actually made that. And I hate that somebody actually made that. Yeah, I would agree. So
I've been tempted to make like really ridiculous, like hour-long essays that have no point to them. Like I'll just come up with some dumb premise just because I feel like making fun of something, and the essay itself is just one long joke at whatever I'm making fun of. I'm just on the cusp of dedicating that time to something like that.
Well, only do it if you can make money. That's what I say. Some jokes aren't quite worth making unless you can make some money off them.
All right, I'm back. What I missed?
Oh, he was talking about making hour-long troll essays, which are hilarious.
Oh,
it's
awesome.
a wonderful concept, but I mean, your time is valuable, Metal. I appreciate you spending it here, but do what you want. It's your life. I don't want to give you advice for it.
I'll give you advice. Buy Omega Girl.
Taylor says, should we reverse the question? I don't know what that means.
The question the question he meant is the question he asked earlier, which was a comic that you didn't expect to like but did. So the reverse of that would be, what's a comic that you really expected to like and then hated? So we already have Reese's answer because it's Red Rooster.
Yeah.
Okay. So
there's been several. Batman Hush was one.
Oh really? I like Hush.
Oh yeah, about halfway in I realized that it's just pissing up your leg, and it's trash.
I think I liked Hush because of the progression of Batman and Catwoman's relationship.
Yeah,
I liked it.
You get that out of one issue of an Alan Grant comic from 1989. God, it just
Also, I love the way they portray Killer Croc. Killer Croc often gets portrayed in this he's more human than Croc, and I think the way they had to capture the sort of like he's reptilian enough. I like that.
Yeah, it was not good. I did not like it. And you can actually feel the moment they started rewriting their story to compensate for fan commentary. And that's always trash.
I like Hush as a villain though. It's when you're inventing Batman villains.
I think he was weak as a Batman villain.
I think he was all right. He's not the strongest character.
No, he's horrible. It's stupid. It's like, okay, it's the same
problem.
It's the same problem as the Court of Owls problem.
I get
it's exactly the same problem as the Court of Owls.
I get to defend him before you tear him down.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. The things I like about Hush, I think it's cool that he's got a line on Batman's origin, which is neat. I like his design. He has this kind of noir design to him, and the bandages are a nice touch. I mean, like, Batman has a very big rogues gallery, and so coming up with a Batman villain is a challenge nowadays. Like you're gonna either run into treaded territory, or it's or you're gonna come up with something that doesn't fit his universe. Coming up with a Batman character is not an easy thing to do, and I personally
let's see.
I think some of the things jive with me. Yeah.
So, I want to make somebody who is Batman but not Batman. It's not Killer Moth. That's not Bane. So we're going to give him Batman's origin story and dress him up like the Invisible Man from the Universal movie, and it'll be awesome.
The artwork sells it. The artwork sells it. He looks creepy.
Yeah.
And,
the artwork doesn't sell it. The artwork,
I disagree.
It makes it even worse.
I disagree.
It's just sort of like,
artwork sells it.
It's a polished turd. It's terrible.
I think that you need to take your granola today. You're hating on everything.
Yeah. Well, that was the.
Well,
I
would say eat a Snickers, but
what's a story I thought I was going to like that I hated?
This is
there
bad.
You go. All right.
Well, and also one of the things you got to look at is like this is in the context of like The Long Halloween and Dark Victory are both such excellent detective stories, and
I like the long Halloween. I do.
And freaking Hush is nothing but a cheat. The whole thing is a cheat. It's a cheat. And here's the other part of it is Hush suffers the same problem as the Parliament of Owls. Oh no, what is it? The
Court of Owls.
Court of Owls. Which
I think Parliament is one that I think Parliament may have
Parliament of Owls was from C.S. Lewis. Silverchair. But it suffers the same problem, is that we're uncovering a decades-long criminal conspiracy that is intimately tied to Bruce's origin that he never noticed, and so the world's greatest detective, oh my god, you're a chump, is the same thing. It's impossible. If they would have said, okay, we're going to stick this into year 3, or we're going to stick this into a year 4 story, we've never told a year 4 story, then okay, maybe you can pull it off. But yeah. So putting it into, and this is the thing is, at the time in continuity, this is Batman year 12, and in Batman year 12, suddenly he's facing the hardest challenge he's ever had. There's the meat. Come on, it's trash.
It's not. I think that's going too far.
You just got to make Batman look like a chump.
I did not think Batman looked like a chump in that story. I think that's.
Well, it made me stop buying Batman comics. So how do you feel about that? I had at that point been buying Batman comics for 15 years, and I was like, nah, I think I'm going to read something else.
I can see. I would accept the criticism that it's not top tier storytelling for Batman, but I don't think it's that bad. I enjoyed it. I was a bit bummed at when it did resolve, because it was like, I definitely noticed that they're doing we have to reset the status quo a bit at the end, because it's like, hey, we're progressing the relationship with him and Catwoman. No, we have to do the 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I was like, it was very typical.
There was more character development between Batman and Catwoman going on in the pages of Catwoman by Brubaker than there was in a single, like in the entirety. Like it wasn't good. It wasn't Tom King level bad.
I thought it was fine. I don't think I would rate it, because obviously stuff like Long Halloween is something very, very memorable in terms of hey, this stands out as being extremely good. But when it comes to a Batman story that stands out to me as not being good, I would say Arkham Asylum.
I haven't read that, so
because
I'm sure it's bad. It's Grant Morrison.
Arkham Asylum is very artistic, but what was that thing that Picard said? There's a difference between arty and artful.
Mm-hmm.
So Arkham Asylum is very arty, and it's very clever in the arty things it does, but it's also the worst Batman story I've ever read, because the character who is in Arkham Asylum is not Batman. So it's like, what am I doing if I'm watching this character who is wearing the Batman cowl and is acting nowhere like the character that I'm supposed to know?
That's like Tom King's Batman.
The best explanation I got was that, you're supposed to interpret it as a fever dream. And I went, okay, cool. Where is that in the book?
That's why the game is better, which I've told you before. So one of the reasons the game is better for two main reasons. One, instead of going with the version of Batman and the world of Batman from the original comic, they took the Timverse, the Bruce Timm Batman, and made it a direct follow-up to that series, years later. So it has that same personality. Conroy comes back to voice Batman. All of the voice actors that are still around came back to voice each of their roles. And all the characters are it's kind of the same plot for the most part. It's tweaked to work with that universe. All the characters feel like the characters you knew from that show. So there's a thread of continuity. You already know what to expect. But then the second one is it captures the fever dream, because Scarecrow plays a very big part of the plot of the game, and you actually get hit with the fear gas very early on and throughout it, and you experience.
I thought that was the third one. I thought the third one is the one where that happens.
That happens in the original game. They're just they mix the story together as much as they can for it, and it works more fluidly in this kind of semi-open world game of the plot. And you actually have to play through the fear dreams and stuff, where you might have a giant scarecrow attacking you while you're going across a skyscraper and stuff.
Seen that.
So I think it just handles everything way better.
No, the art in Arkham Asylum, and like I said, in some of the artistic things that are done in that book, I will definitely recognize and give credit to. Like it's there. It's like the things they're doing with the lettering and the stuff they're doing in between the panels that make it look like, oh, this insanity effect here and there. The whole idea of like Batman being this kind of like Joseph Campbell character as he fights the dragon, Killer Croc. Like I got it. I got the symbolism, but when you realize that Batman is stabbing a mental patient in the mental hospital, you're like, that's not Batman. That's not what Batman does. Batman doesn't.
Yeah, the game took that out.
Yeah,
Instead,
Batman
you're going through like the sewer area that was converted for Croc to be able to be like the crocodile he thinks he is, and physically kind of resembles. What you're doing is you are basically playing Frogger. In a way, like you're trying to sneak past him on these floating wooden like pallets and stuff like that, and you're trying to avoid him getting you from the water. So they turn it more into like a puzzle like test of skill. Yeah. And at no point does Croc like ever get seriously injured, because Batman wouldn't do that to him if he could avoid it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm fine with Batman, like, beating him up or stuff, but it was like they did this whole image of Batman's like the knight fighting the dragon. He literally stabs him with like a poker, like a fireplace poker or something. And it's just like, nah, brah, that's not how Batman do. Who is this character? Like, what are you doing? And it was an example.
He doesn't want to injure any of these people if he can avoid it.
Right.
He's just in circumstances where he has to. Half the time.
But it was a case of, and this is not the first time that I think Grant does this, but Grant often, I think, makes the story fit the theme he wants in his head, as opposed to the other way around. Where it's like, hey, I've got a theme, I'm going to make the, I'm going to like, build some things around it a little. Grant basically says, I have this image or theme in my head. I'm going to shoehorn this character into this metaphor that I have. So I think he does it a bit with All-Star Superman when he says, okay, sun god. And then it's like everything ends up, basically serving that. And then
I hate All-Star Superman.
I know you do. That's partly why I brought it up. We're getting away from the question. Metal, what's a comic that you were supposed to like and thought you would? But then
I think it's going to be sad because I think all of our answers are a Batman comic.
Okay.
Mine, a lot more recent. Okay. It was the follow-up to White Knight. I think it was called the White Knight Chronicles. Remember?
Yeah.
Is that the Sean Gordon Murphy?
Yes, I really liked White Knight for what it was. For like an alt-verse thing, I think it was able to be its own thing, but also kind of recapture some of the earlier like Batman motifs that made him a likable character, where he's kind of like all of the police force as one person, but the people in the town don't necessarily trust him, so the town is starting to like flip on the guy and stuff like that. But really good story, very tightly narratively woven. So even like the Joker side of things.
Is the sequel.
Yeah, the Curse or whatever it was. Yeah, the Curse of the White Knight. That one was boring. It was not as good as the White Knight before it. And
I would agree that it wasn't as good as White Knight before it. But the other thing about it was that like it's like a 7-issue series, and it like stumbles in issue 5, and so 6 and 7 are just like a slog, and then like in between 5 and 6 there was a
Folks,
we lost him. Maybe he forgot to plug his laptop in again.
I'm hoping it's not installing updates. So I'll have to give White Knight a try at some point, but I think I was kind of burned out on the concept before I even read it.
Probably,
because of how often we get those really dumb Twitter takes about how Batman's the real problem with Gotham. And I'm just like, just because of that narrative we get so often in pop culture and in social media, I kind of just rolled my eyes when Sean Gordon Murphy was like, well, I'm going to write a comic where Batman ends up being, like the real problem. And I was just like, eye roll, pass.
But the problem is like, that's just the pitch, right? And that's what sells it badly, because he writes the comic and Batman actually isn't the real problem with Gotham. He's the actual solution to Gotham. but the world sees him as the problem, right? Because the Joker is like trying to become mayor and stuff, or I think it's DA, and he is basically taking Batman to court. So it's publicity. The PR is that Batman's the problem, while he's actually doing the good in the world.
Okay,
So,
so like, that's
sadly,
actually,
it's actually the opposite of
that sounds better than
that.
okay. Well, that's a case of bad marketing then, because
Yeah.
When I initially heard that kind of pitch for it, I was like, I'm so tired of this take, because it's so overdone. Like the amount of people who on Twitter be like, actually, it's Batman that's the real problem with Gotham.
Yeah.
He's
Well, that's even part of it too. The people fighting like Joker's side. Because he's not actually Joker, right? Is that the one where Joker gets reformed? Yeah, he kind of has like an actual civilian. He becomes like a lawyer and everything like that, and he's fighting Batman. And like the whole thing is he's having to pick at every argument he can to try to take Batman down. Even saying like, oh, he does more harm than good. The casualties, the damages to the town and stuff like that while fighting people. Like he tries every angle he can to fight him, and it's kind of a very metatextual story, but it's fine because he's writing a non-canon, like from the beginning, it's its own universe story that has the actual text of what's going on. But then there's also like this legal struggle that talks about like the nature of Batman at the same time.
Yeah, so that's you're pitching it way better than the marketers did. So I'll have to check it out at some point.
Yeah.
It's like I said, just initially I was just like turned off from it.
There's even like this cool point where Joker's like becoming Joker again, like the insane part of him's like cracking through. So there's like two Harleys. There's the like secretary reformed like actual person Harley, but then there's like in his head there's the crazy Harley that's trying to get him to be the Joker. So there's actually multiple plot points going on too. It's a very well crafted story, and then the follow up happens.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say then the one that you that you didn't like.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's bad. It's just not good.
Evie in the chat with exactly the take that I hate. Seeing if Batman's a real hero, why doesn't he use his money to get poor people off the street instead of beating them? It's to add that to the whole like that he's beating up. Because the recent addition to that is he beats up mental patients on the street.
Yeah.
So Matt says his browser locked. Oh gosh, we're probably doing with a full restart then.
Maybe.
But yeah. So the whole idea of like, Batman is a rich, privileged 1%er who beats up mental patients is the take. Yeah.
But in modern versions, Batman is a mental patient, so it's really just punching across the bow, not up or down.
It's not up or down; it's lateral. That's funny. It's still punching down because of his
rich.
Yeah, his white richness, right?
Yeah. They have to give him something.
Right.
My problem is like it comes from people who really don't read Batman. Like even the modern writers, they don't read old Batman because he's always done stuff as Bruce Wayne, like philanthropy. He has schools named after him. He's got like rehabilitation wings after him. There's always little bits later in his career, like when he's doing things with the Justice League and stuff, where he'll be like playing with kids while everybody else is talking to the parents and stuff. Like Batman does a lot.
He does,
for the community as Bruce Wayne. He just has to be Batman because it turns out no matter what he does with his money, it's not enough to solve how flawed Gotham is. Yeah,
and the thing is that this is another thing I had a problem with the guy I was talking about earlier, Jose Alanas. I think if you're going to... I think it weakens criticism a lot when you're not a creator. Because those Batman piss takes are really hilarious when you say, okay, let's pretend for a moment that you're right. Batman is actually the problem. So let's in a fictional universe, Batman is now going to devote all of his money, all of it, to make Gotham this perfect utopia. How are you going to tell a Batman story with that?
Yeah.
Everything is perfect because we've created a socialist utopia. The end. like it's just, when you're a storyteller who's creating fiction for a sensationalist serial medium, you need new villains every month. You need new threats. So the idea of like, oh my gosh, like these are people who aren't writing the stories. And if they did have to write the stories, they would instantly either recreate what we already have, or they would create more garbage worse than we've ever seen. Which I think we're actually kind of starting to get now, because you now have writers who, I'm thinking of like some of the weirdness I've heard with X-Men recently. It's like, let's create this really weird, like quasi ethno state with the X-Men.
Oh, you've been there, done that.
Yeah, and the stories get like just weird now. They're not just superheroes now. It's got this very weird taste in your mouth now when you try to read an X-Men story. In some cases,
yeah,
because the whole thing has this weird socio-political, geopolitical angle to it that it didn't have before, that really kind of mucks about with what the X-Men originally were.
Well, like, it's not like you can't do stuff like that with Batman if you're a good writer. Because I can think of two movie adaptations of things. Well, one's actually original for the movie. The other's an adaptation of an arc that I thought handled it way better than the arc did. But like, Batman does have problems as a character from how long he's been around. I mean, every character does some like flaws that never really get worked out or called out on, and maybe some later creator will see something and find something interesting to do with it. And I think Mask of the Phantasm does a good job of addressing the emotional side of Bruce specifically. That doesn't really get touched on a lot. And the Under the Red Hood animated movie covers the idea that Bruce is part of the problem. It's not that he is the problem, but like the way he handles things might in turn be part of the problem, but that doesn't mean he can change it either.
Sure. So back in chat, we have Evie, Neostars here. Good to see you. Evie says, now I haven't seen the movie, but in the Batman, there's a trailer where some politician basically makes a sarcastic joke about Bruce being a philanthropist as if he isn't. Oh yeah, like the Batman 89 comic did like the same thing. Bruce was basically saying, hey, I'm going to give like a whole bunch of money because, you know, y'all are always saying I don't do enough. And they were like, oh, you think the white man can just be the savior by swooping in with your money? And it was just like, so basically he's damned if he does, he's damned if he don't, right? Because if he doesn't spend all of his money, then it's like, oh, you rich privileged white boy. But if he walks in and says, hey, I have all this money, I want to help solve your problems, it's, how dare you think as a rich white man that you come in and solve our problems? And it's just like, oh my gosh, pick a lane.
Yeah, it's a game you can't win. You just can't play it.
Exactly. And that's what happened in Batman 89. And they were like, oh no, Bruce, you need to just like, you know, check your privilege. And it was just, oh yeah, I know this problem has more complexity and I just need to be aware of. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, shut up, shut up, you know? So Neostar says, imagine thinking that all crime would be resolved with financial stability. It's never personal decisions and outside circumstances that cause crime to happen. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, if crime solved money, we'd get rid of crime by now. We've tried injecting money into plenty of like disaster cities and it does nothing because it never goes to the right place. And even if it does, there's only so much money can do.
The problem with any solution of a social or financial caliber is the fact that humans are involved. And that's I think it's a fair point to say too. But when humans are involved, you have to deal with the fact. And now we have a new person in chat. Matthew D. Reese says, "I am checking my privilege by giving you money." No. See, that's you haven't checked it enough because you think that your money could solve the problem, which puts you in a position of power above the oppressed person that you're oppressing. Yeah. That's how that line of thinking goes. Like I said, this is the stuff I was talking about earlier with that very postmodern thinking where you're always wrong. And the only way to even get close to being right is to admit how wrong you are.
Yes, they want you to distribute you the money, but they want you to feel guilty about it as you're doing it because they need to retain the power of the situation.
Yeah, it's really, like I said, that's part of the problem I had with Jose Alanes is that it's this worldview ends up being very twisted. Check in, mate. But no, metal. I completely agree with that. It's about money, and it's also about a emotional power. This is where I really like Ayn Rand, because in Atlas Shrugged, she pegged 100% what this is like when you're dealing with these types of parasites, essentially.
Yeah, it was literally emotional terrorism. Like there's nothing else to it.
And we're seeing it today. When you see people who and you go up to them and you ask them, what are you asking me to do? And they kind of just shuffle their feet and kind of go, well, you know what I'm asking you to do. And they don't want to come out and actually say what they're asking for, because once they verbalize it, they kind of paint themselves as the villain. So they kind of try to guilt you into it, and you use circuitous language to kind of, browbeat you into a pulp, so that no matter what you say, you're wrong. And because you're just in that position of constantly apologizing, you can then be you're so malleable that they can get whatever they want out of you after.
Well, that's like worse than like physical acts of terrorism, because physical acts of terrorism, they just makes you afraid in the moment. And you're afraid that moment might come back, but you can remove yourself from that situation. This kind of like stochastic psychological terrorism, you're not even sure if you're worried in the moment, but it's a worry that follows you long after you remove yourself from the situation.
The characters in Ayn Rand were like, if you actually came at me with your fists, I would have appreciated it more. Yeah. It's the fact that you're coming at me and it's just like shuffling your feet, and then I have to say what it is that you want. You have the gun pointed at my head, but you won't say that you have a gun and that you're pointing at my head. I have to say it for you. Yeah. And then when I say that, you then gaslight me and say, no, we're not pointing the gun at your head. We won't allow you to leave until you sign away all of the rights to, your business.
Yeah, you happen to be standing in all the directions I need to be pointing my gun.
Yeah. All right, Matt, are you? Is your computer installing like the entire operating system now, or did you delete System 32? Let's see. Taylor says it's almost as if people are naturally sinful and incapable of solving every problem. That is correct. Neostar says
the world's complicated as heck, and there are problems you don't even know are problems.
Yeah. Neostar says that's another problem with modern comics. There's no sense of accountability or standards. They want to blame you for a problem. They also don't want you to be in the solution to the said problem. He's switching to Linux.
Probably solved most of his problems.
It's just not doing it. Oh, geez. Did your computer brick? That's a challenge. That's interesting. I wish. Okay. Well, you might have to hop on your phone if you're gonna even end the stream, or this thing's just gonna go on for the next 9 hours.
For free, he can add like one studio manager. He should have just added you as a manager already.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. They added recently that you can put in like another member that can run your streams and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that thing that neither of us knew you could do?
Well, if you checked his emails, I got one, and I hardly even use this software.
I checked it, and that's the thing that popped up to me is I was like, "Hey, Reese, we have background music now, which I am unable to change because
you're not a manager.
Because I'm not a manager." All right, start up the new Reese laptop fund. Well, we need to start up the keep the premium StreamYards management fund up, because that's why you get to see that lovely Ideal Comics logo in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, premium, you probably have up like 2 or 3 managers too, but you definitely should be one. You're always on here.
I am the de facto co-host. I delete my StreamYard emails. Oh gosh, that's the most Reese thing that ever reached.
So you'll start relying on me to relay important information that comes out of the emails just because I happen to also get them.
All right, so I mean, can you hop on your phone while your computer decides whether or not it's going to work in the next, like I said, 6 hours? Hey, the good news is that since we upgraded to the version that we have, I think you can stream, because I think normal StreamYards has like a 20-hour limit per month, which most people don't hit.
Yeah.
But I think that cap is either expanded or lifted on the version that we have right now.
Yeah,
So you're safe there. All right, chat, throw some more questions our way.
Yeah, we own the show now until he gets back.
Yeah. Let's talk about. Someone ask a question. What's the thing we don't like about Reese? And we can just go out on that for. We could do that for another 2 hours.
Yeah. See, and another thing, he should just hop on his phone and add you as like a member anyway, because then you could have control over which questions go on the screen.
No, not set up on my phone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, drive down to your local library at 11:20. Taylor says, "All right, well, gotta get to bed. See you later." Good. Thank you for coming, as always. And I will. I'll get you a script for Super Schooled soon. I am on spring break, so I do have a little bit more free time. Although that time is going to be eaten up with 9 hours of Showa and a whole bunch of books I have to read.
Yeah.
But also, speaking of which, Taylor recently finished 3 pages of a 4-page, what will be a 4-page Omega Girl short.
Nice.
Story. Yeah. And if I had if I were manager, I could share that image on screen with you. But it's to give you guys just a brief preview. It's because Taylor's style is definitely more cartoony, so I decided to tap into that, and the story's going to be a little bit. A bit of a twist on the typical Omega Girl setup. So, an Omega Girl story with a twist. Imagine that.
Pull something back around from earlier topic. I think everything's a disability these days. People are pushing it too far. But hey, while people are pushing it far, might as well take as much advantage of it as possible. I'm just going to start pushing for being nocturnal as a disability, so government-run things have to operate 24 hours, and I can use the library in the middle of the night.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have to be accommodated and celebrated because
I sleep during the day and I'm up all night.
What you're saying is that you're Batman.
Yeah.
My disability
another disability. He's still just punching laterally, man.
Yeah. My disability is that I'm Batman. Now give me government funds.
Well, I mean, if I was actually Batman, they couldn't give me government funds. I'd be way too rich.
See, you say that, but...
Well, he's probably siphoning subsidies out of Wayne Enterprises anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But see, they're not supposed to be for him directly. They're supposed to be for Wayne Enterprises, but he's probably
right. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm sure that the accounting. Actually, I remember reading a story recently where the accounting at Wayne Tech was part of the plot.
Yeah.
That Bruce doesn't know what half his departments are doing and where they're getting their money from.
Well, they even kind of did that in the Nolan trilogy.
They did,
There's like all this unaccounted spendings for like this tank and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's the stuff that Bruce knew about. And then there's the stuff that Bruce didn't know about. Yeah, exactly. You're spending my money on what?
There's stuff that freaking Lucius didn't even know about. Like, he didn't find out about the whole monitoring system until Bruce showed it to him.
Neostar says, then again, it doesn't help that a lot of these people hired to write mainstream comics are objectively antithetical to the series. Yes, that is a huge point I wanted to bring up. I think one of the main reasons that superhero comics... We back?
Sort of.
Looks like it.
Hey.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my camera is not working. And I don't know what that's
Well, it looks like it's set to OBS virtual cam. You might want to change which camera is being picked up.
I don't even have OBS installed on this machine, I think. Okay,
Well, that is definitely the OBS symbol.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, your mic's coming in.
Okay. Hey, it is set there. Let's try the integrated camera. Hey.
There you go.
Well, and he's back.
I know that because I'm currently using the OBS virtual cam to display my little
animation
sprite and audio visualizer.
All right, what the heck happened?
I have no idea. It just like went away, and then like the browser went and like when it restarted, I didn't even restart my computer. I just restarted the browser, and it lost all of my saved tabs, and it's frustrating. Okay, there were questions.
Well, at least we're on point with Reese's regular scheduled stream crash.
Well, and I had a big crash earlier today. I mean, I had to restart my home machine earlier today, and I was like, okay, well, it did a bunch of updates. Cool, it's done its thing for the day.
It's had its daily crash, so we should be good. So it decided to give you. It loves you so much. It decided to do a twofer,
a double dose.
Evie says favorite comic tubers.
So okay, I'm gonna go back up the thing. There was
we've been
define comic tuber.
I think we've been keeping up with chat.
Yeah, there's some that we not gotten to yet that were way back there.
Okay.
What do you think about Batman Begins as opposed to the other two? I think Batman Begins was good.
I think the question was, why do you think it's better?
Good question.
I think Batman Begins is a better action film.
Yeah.
It is objectively, I think it's a better action film than the other two, definitely. And so in terms of like the typical, not even just typical, just say, hey, popcorn movie, I'm enjoying a action film with Batman in it. I think Batman Begins delivers much more strongly there. I think the reason why I like Dark Knight, I think Dark Knight's my favorite out of the three, although I've started to warm up more to Dark Knight Rises. And I think the reason why I like those two, they're definitely not nearly as good at the action. There's much less of it, I think. And the action that we get is, in some cases, just lackluster, if I'm being honest. But I think the symbolic, literary, metaphorical stuff going on there was much more rich, and I enjoyed that from the other two.
I think Begins also had a better mystery to it. I mean, it was still kind of obvious if you're paying attention to it, but I mean, even a decent mystery should have some way for you to follow along. Mm-hmm. But the actual turn of events was more mysterious, slightly more of a detective story than the other ones, because none of them are really detective stories.
Yeah, the closest they get to detecting, as I remember, they're trying to chase down the Joker. So there's a little bit of crime scene chase down. Oh, who's the Joker's real identity and blah blah blah, birth certificate, this and stuff. But the story's not really about that as much. It's much more about it's kind of weird, but the Dark Knight in a lot of ways is a ruling story. It's a story about kind of ruling and managing a city, and the power dynamics there.
Yeah, there's like mob movies almost. They're crime.
Yeah, and there is some detective stuff in the first in the Dark Knight, in the first third of the Dark Knight. Just like there's some good detective stuff in the first third of Batman v Superman, and then the rest of the movie's garbage.
I think what I liked about Begins though is you take a break because there's like the whole training montage and stuff, but in general the detective stuff is kind of like spaced out between the movies, so you kind of get bits of it throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. So there's
a little bit of a mystery with like Bane in and Talia in Dark Knight Rises, but it's not nearly as much of a detective story.
It's mystery, it's not detective. It's mystery in the classical sense. It's not a detective story.
It's mystery as in you don't know.
It's something you don't know that is to be discovered and revealed. So
it's not like Batman was actually actively hunting it down. He just gets the information just because it's that time in the movie to give it.
I think the third one also kind of ruins the first one for me a little bit.
It's a little
because it wasn't a superhero movie at all. They took all of like the magic and fantastic elements out of it. So the fact that we didn't get like Lazarus Pits bringing Ra's al Ghul back with the whole like Talia thing, it was just very it was sour for me. It's not like a real reason to hate it because the movie is its own thing, but it just kind of soured the whole thing.
The thing that I liked about it is that even without that stuff, you still had a thing where he was inspiring the people of Gotham. So there's definitely the hero story in that one. The thing I didn't like about it was that it spent so much time building the dichotomy between being the hero and having a life. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Because every husband, every father has a place to be a hero in his life. So there's.
Sorry, I'm clearing my throat because I'm feeling a little under the weather, not because I'm enjoying. I'm not clearing my throat for any like discussion related reason. Once I realized that, or once it really kind of clicked for me, that Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises this is an alternate take in a more realistic, or maybe not, a kind of realism, a kind of verisimilitude. I really appreciated like the way they did the Lazarus Pit in Dark Knight Rises, because like, we're not going to do a supernatural thing. So the Lazarus Pit is going to be a symbolic thing. So when you rise out of that hole, it's like going from death to life. And it's like, okay, I can appreciate in this again, I like superhero physics, I like the supernatural, I like superpowers. But if you're going to basically do a committed to realism take, I like the idea of the Lazarus Pit being a symbolic thing. And so that's clever. I kind of like it. And so it really kind of amps up not the supernatural part that you like, but it amps up the psychological aspect of it, because they spend a lot of time in the death pit, and he has to basically climb out of it from death to life and become a new man. And on a literary level, a symbolic level, I appreciate that.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, I wanted my actual Lazarus pits.
Right, exactly. No, I feel you there. I do. And that's why it's like, I really have to separate that, that's Nolan's vision is not going to provide me that. I have to appreciate what he is providing me, which is also good. And another director would be the type of person who would actually give me my real Lazarus Pit.
I wouldn't even mind if he just did like almost a borderline sci-fi, because those movies, they're very sci-fi. They're not really, because a lot of the stuff that Batman has are things that maybe eventually could be made, but they're not available yet.
Right. That's what, it's a type of realism. It's not actual.
They're about as realistic as Fast and Furious movies are.
Well, I don't know. That last one had
Fast and Furious might push a little bit further with some of the more recent entries, but like on average with Fast and Furious.
Okay.
But they could have done like, somehow you didn't realize it, they recovered his body before he was completely dead, and they put him on ice and brought him back, and that was the Lazarus Pit. It was like this cryo machine or something. Like there's things within the technology of that universe that could have been done to where it could have been symbolic, but it could have also been literal at the same time.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess I was a little bummed that Liam Neeson ended up just being a vision in the third film.
Yeah. And Ghoul is such a good villain. He's probably one of the best Batman characters.
The way Liam Neeson played him, I definitely did appreciate. Although technically they didn't pronounce his name right, because I'm trying to remember who
Roz.
Yeah. Which
they say Roz.
I personally prefer that pronunciation, but it's like, no, it's Raish.
Head of the demon, Ra's al Ghul.
Reese, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we got a couple more questions here.
Actually, just comments as far as I can tell.
We do have favorite. Evie wanted to ask what our favorite comic YouTuber is.
Well, me. No. Although I did last week. I did go through and re-listen to the first two Comics Creators Club streams, just for kicks, because those were a lot of fun.
Awesome. Just the first two?
Yeah. I mean, the other ones were recent enough in my memory that it wasn't like I'd forgotten anything. But
okay, gotcha. The other ones after the first two are crap.
Well, they're fine. They were very recently in my memory.
You just got to give them a little more time.
I'm just messing with you. No,
I usually go back and re-listen to most of my streams. Mostly, I have listened to a few of them a couple times. The first time we had Matt. And the one that's in the trailer, actually, I've listened to that one more than once.
Oh, the why Mouse Ruined Comics.
Yeah, that from that clip, the show that's clipped from.
I need to go back and watch that one because I need that context again. I've kind of forgotten it.
Yeah, it's a fun show.
Favorite comics tubers.
Yeah.
Mine is definitely a regular to this program. It's Marmaduke. I love every single like comic, manga, whatever review he's done.
His reviews are legit.
Yeah, he's got like a very interesting insight on like why he appreciates or doesn't like something that you don't really get from most other people. And I always find it fun.
He makes objective arguments about subjective things. So it's not like you're not going to listen to Marms and hear him, one time talk about, a story he wrote. And that's one thing, like, I got really sick of like Richard Meyer's videos because he'll go on talking about something he really hates. And then like the next month he'll review a comic that's exactly the same damn story by the same damn people. I'm like, I really like this one. It's like, dude, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because he likes things for very aesthetic reasons. So everything is just completely subjective with Richard.
One thing I've realized, it is. Meyer mistakes things he enjoys for things that are good. And I'm not sure that I'm thinking the more I think about it, the less I think that's unique.
Because a lot of us are guilty of that.
A lot of us are guilty of that.
Yeah.
But he 100% mistakes, and that's why his taste in movies is so terrible because it doesn't, any flashing light, and he just like stares and like lets drool drip down his chin.
That's because I've never been that way, and it's probably one of the reasons why I like Marm stuff a lot. I've always been able to like separate my subjective feelings of something from the objective, which is like why even with the Batman thing, I can say it is its own thing and can be appreciated for that. But here's the things I personally don't like about it. I really like the Super Mario Brothers movie, and that thing is not good. But I can give you the reasons why I personally like it.
I actually am 100% with you on that. I was scared to watch it, but when I did watch it, when they got the riff tracks for it, and there is a charm in that picture that is indescribable, and it's not.
I cannot forgive that movie for how we did not get real Bowser. Just can't forgive it. I love Bowser. He's my favorite Mario character.
Yeah, but
he's a good character. Yeah,
the Bowser in that is still not. I mean, there's something. I don't know, man.
Dennis
He's a great
Hopper.
Villain. He just isn't Bowser.
It's Dennis Hopper with weird stuff on his head. That's not Bowser.
I'm saying is like
germaphobe Dennis Hopper. Like I love the villain. It's just not King Koopa.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go. That's the ticket.
There you go. That might be. I like one. My answer for comic YouTuber, and I'll even mention this briefly with Richard Meyer. I enjoy comic YouTubers for different reasons. So one thing I actually like about Richard Meyer is the fact that because it's kind of that thing like the nostalgia critic. I remember it, so you don't have to. He buys the crap, so I don't have to. So like, there's a way I can kind of keep up with like recent comic books just by watching his stream, and I don't even have to listen to his takes as much. But it's like, oh, that's what happened in the newest issue of blank. And so there's a way I can kind of keep up because he just buys all of it and then goes, "This is so stupid," which I often agree with. Maybe for different reasons, but there's just that aspect to it. So one of the channels that I'll say that I like is because one thing I like, and maybe it's just because I'm a shallow narcissist, but one thing that really draws me to a channel, especially a comics channel, is the ability for me to engage. Like, so one thing that I really appreciated that the Comicsgate and Comicsgate adjacent communities would do is how often they would just pop link in chat and let you hop on and participate. Because there are other comic channels that I tried to participate with, and it's very rare that I get the opportunity to do anything other than just say something in chat, and then maybe they won't. Maybe that chat often will not even be read. So the thing that I love about the YouTube space is the participatory element. So one channel I'll say that I recommend is a guy by the name of Dark Gift Comics, and he's a really chill, laid back dude, and he has a stream called Toke Time where he just lights up some marijuana and just lets people talk about comics or pop culture or whatever. He pops the link in chat, and it's just a really chill sort of environment. And so those are the types of spaces I really like, because it's like, hey, pop the link in chat and you can participate in it. Because that ability is what creates, I think, a lot of community in the comic book sphere, is to the ability for people to participate, to have a voice, to interact with the creators, or to say their piece. And I like YouTube channels that do that. So that's.
If I could find a way to go through life and never having had interacted or been aware of Dark Gift, I think my life would have been happier.
You had a fight. You had a fight with Dark Gift. Are you serious?
Oh, many fights.
How? He's like the most unfighting guy ever.
Because if you like, any kind of conversation we've ever had, I mean, he's nonsensical. And so if you point out that he's nonsensical, he gets very upset and offended and assumes you must be one of those people. No, you're just saying things that don't.
Were these Twitter conversations or actual ones?
Twitter conversations.
Okay, I don't count Twitter conversations. Yeah. Because they're almost never conversations.
This I've discovered.
Okay. Okay.
Especially,
I'm sure if you talk to him in his neutral ground or toke time, you'd probably get on just fine. He's like I say, he's one of the chillest guys that you could ever talk to. If
you can't string together two thoughts on a Twitter thread, then you're not worth the time.
I think that's a bit unfair.
It's not.
Well, see, I think a lot of comic enjoyers and writers specifically like Twitter, because Twitter makes it feel like you're in a comic. It's just shouting one-liners back and forth at each other the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
That may be funny.
I'm just saying that I've talked to him. I don't agree with him on some stuff, but I've always had good conversations when I've talked to him in person. I don't use Twitter to talk to people, except DMs occasionally, but that's not what I use Twitter for.
Yeah, but you can put 1,000 words in a DM.
Yeah. I don't block anybody, but I've muted him. And my life has been infinitely better. Infinitely.
I get this feeling, Reese, that you don't like people.
There's certain people I don't like. I don't like people that pretend to speak truth but can't actually articulate ideas.
He can articulate them in person. I've talked to him about stuff.
Are you sure it's not a contact high?
I can neither confirm or deny this. I don't. He does enjoy his tokes. Evie says probably because he's high. I don't know what that's in reference to, but Dark Gift would definitely admit to some of that, because he definitely likes to light one up.
Yeah.
But just setting aside some of that stuff for a moment, I do appreciate, like I said, YouTube channels that have the participatory part. And like I said, when a channel is just, hey, we're just talking about the newest Marvel movie, and they just 4 or 5 talking heads, and I can't really add anything to it. And I also like to look for streams that talk about indie books as well, because I'm like, everyone's going to be talking about the newest season of whatever Marvel property is, so I really enjoy the sort of, hey, I'm a scrappy person who has his own crudely drawn webcomic, and I have 700 chapters of it, and I'm reposting them right now. And I like those streams, the people who are in the trenches making, work, figuring out how to do it, making tons of mistakes while they do it. So those are the people I like to hang out with, because it's a different space and it's fun, and you get to participate in it and have fun and get to know these people. That's my favorite type of YouTube space.
The only YouTube comics channels that I watch anymore, I try to catch a couple Perch videos every once in a week, because he's got some interesting ideas, and I like the breadth of knowledge in comic history he's got.
See, Perch. Okay, see, that's funny, because Perch sometimes drives me up a wall.
Oh yeah, sometimes he does too.
Because he when it hits some of his takes, and he's determined to be, and I appreciate he's determined to be comic book Switzerland.
You would, but
No, I appreciate that sometimes, but sometimes he takes it, I think, a step too far.
Yeah,
And,
I would agree.
And then I lose it, and then sometimes his takes are just what he did one. It was just wrong, and I was just like, no. What was he doing? I think he was comparing book sales for comics to like children's book sales, and I'm like, these are apples and oranges. You can't compare these two things and expect quality results. So there was some comparison he did that I really didn't like, because it was taking two things that were not similar to each other and making comparisons, and I didn't feel like it was.
If you shorten your scope and only talk about like Scholastic's comics to Scholastic's books, they're all on the same shelf when they're selling to kids. But that's like a very, very specific comparison right there.
Right, and it's not fully cognizant of the factors of how you should compare those things, right? Because if you compare comic book sales to children's book sales, and if you don't frame that comparison properly, you're going to give a very, I think, warped.
Well, it also depends on what you're trying to demonstrate with those.
Sure,
things,
right. You're exactly.
Yeah.
So,
like, are you trying to say, which is a stronger industry? Well, that's not a good argument. But if you're trying to say, is this a valid space to be selling comic books? Then you're looking at, okay, well, here's a market share of, youth-focused comics. Here's the market share of youth-focused regular books. See how they compare. Why aren't other people taking advantage of this space? That's a different conversation entirely than, which is a stronger industry based upon X, because they're really not comparable.
I'm trying to remember the specifics of the one I didn't like. I think it was a Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, which I think sells better in the Scholastic book market.
Oh yeah, it sells nothing. It sells nothing in the floppies.
Right, and I think he was making some comparison that I was like, okay, exactly, kind of. And my criticism, I think, was along the lines of what you're saying, which is like, okay, it doesn't sell beans in the direct market. It may sell in the Scholastic market, but you can't compare the numbers from the Scholastic market and then say this somehow is indicative of what works in the comic book industry.
Right. No, if that's the video I'm thinking of, that was actually his point. His point was that, like, this is a product that is, people talk say this isn't a comic for you. And he's like, that's right. It's not a comic for you guys in the comic book shop. This is specifically a comic that is made for, 7 to 11-year-old girls who are buying them at Scholastic book fairs where they are being sold.
Okay, yeah, so that's my problem with his argument, though, because that's not 100% true. He's that argument is deliberately misframing things a bit. It is 100% accurate to recognize that yes, this book is not for you. However, all of the marketing and the writing that is done about that book is meant to say this book that's not for you should be for you, or it's deliberately not for you, and we're shoving it down your throats. And his argument ignored that reality.
Right, but but that's a I don't know. I don't.
That was the point I had. The way he framed, I didn't like how he framed it. And because it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was 100% ingenuous. It was a little. I found the way he framed it a little disingenuous. There's my critique.
Well, no, I mean, because like he was directly commenting to people that are pointing at the Diamond records and saying this isn't selling at all. Well, that's not true. It's selling to its intended market,
or at least what should be its intended market. That's actually, I think, the bigger problem there is. Especially most of these books, we should be writing them to be fairly kid-friendly. Maybe not elementary school. You can have like a variety of who it's friendly to. You can have like teen-rated books and all that. But like, the people who are most interested, aside from people who grew up with comics, are people who have yet to grown up with comics. And if you're actually making comics for kids and selling it and marketing as kids, that's a good thing. But it's like Twitless was saying, they don't market this as if it is for kids until it hits Scholastics. All of the pre-marketing is trying to get it to adults.
Exactly. And so my second follow-up...
It's actually a secondary market.
My second follow-up...
Going to the shops is actually a secondary market.
My second follow-up to that is the fact that, and this is another thing, and this might be me nitpicking a bit, but because in that video, again, I might need to go back and rewatch it, but if I recall, he was bringing up, oh, well, kids are buying this at book fairs. And I was like, it's been a while since I've been at a book fair. That is not how book fairs worked. It was usually parents buying books that they thought that they think their kids should have. So the idea that it's like,
well, I don't know. His daughters are both in elementary school, so he would probably know how a book fair works.
The idea that it's super popular at the book fair for kids, I'm like, I think that's ignoring also the fact how, because he's like, oh, the kids are buying it. I'm like, kids tend to not buy books at book fairs. The parents buy. It's not like as like the 6-year-old is walking up and buying the $30 or whatever.
Well, the parent is giving the money, but every Scholastic fair I went to, you give it to you to go and pick the book you want. Like, I picked out every single book I've ever gotten from a book fair.
Yeah.
It's been a while
since anything that kids get are parents' money typically. But
it's been a while since I've been to a book fair, but I thought that point might also be overselling again, the role of people who are basically choosing media for their kids as opposed to the kids naturally. Because like when kids had their nickels and quarters and went to the quarter, rack, that's when you knew that's how comics started, and that's how you knew what the kids liked because the kids actually were buying it.
Right. But the thing is, you're also looking at when it comes to like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, they're like 5 volumes, 6 volumes in the trade. So it's like they're getting return sales on it.
Again, because we don't have the real numbers on any of that, I am a bit dubious about it because
we've got another big problem, right? So
because we tend to not get.
I remember book fairs very vividly, right? Being there. So it's usually done in like your school library or whatever, maybe the cafeteria, depending on how they set it up. They wheel in all of the carts and all the stands and everything. And you've got like probably a selection of possibly 200 books to pick from. Right. And everybody's going around and they give you like half an hour because it's going to take a long time for these kids who, I don't think almost any kid has ADD. That's just the state of being a kid that young. So you're looking through everything. And I think even maybe some more boys are buying this than girls are in general, despite the fact that it's probably aimed more at girls from a writing perspective. Because if you see a whole bunch of books with words, and then all of a sudden you see a comic book right there, and you see a decent cover, because the covers sell these books way more than any of the contents do. But you see it's got a pretty cover, and it's comics, it's pictures instead of words.
It's got a T-Rex on the front.
Yeah, it's got a T-Rex, and it's all pictures with very, very little dialogue in there that you have to read. A lot of people are going to gravitate to those sales over the actual like short novels or chapter books, as they would call them, right? Like these things sell themselves once they're in that environment. They don't need any marketing.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, again, honestly, other than being in previews when Diamond had the show, I'm not sure what marketing it had.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that I'll mention,
and that's one of those things too. Like it wouldn't get reported. That wouldn't get reported through Diamond, but it does get reported because I've talked to Tyler, who works in the publishing industry.
He works in the publishing industry.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
stuff as a competitor. So,
and I brought this up earlier, though. I think that, and I don't know to the extent that this is, but I know for a fact that public schools and librarians buying books does result in a chunk of sales that are definitely sales, but are not indicative of what the public really want, but are indicative of what the institutions want. And that is that plays a role here. Now, sometimes that role is lucky when it's Bone, and Bone got adopted by the Scholastic crowd, and suddenly Bone is now going to have a much longer life because of it. So yay, Bone, although it's the colored version, which is not nearly as good as the black and white. But when that happens with a Marvel book with an obvious agenda, I get skeptical. I'm like, how much of this is AstroTurf?
Have you read Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur?
I have not.
So I haven't either. So I'm not positioned to say that it has an obvious agenda. Whereas there are other comics that I have read do, but those aren't the same books.
So I have read Moon Girl in other books, and she is an what they've done with her as a character is the most irritating, stupid nonsense ever. It's a character because I read her in I think it was Inhumans versus X-Men, and this is
there you go.
This is a character who they try.
Any X book after Grant Morrison ruined them is not worth reading.
That's not true. That's way too far. There are fun moments, even if they're flawed at times.
So I can also tell you why people like this book in schools, particularly, right? Mm-hmm. Because she is kind of the same annoying character. I've read a little bit of it just to check it out. I wouldn't say I've read the whole catalog, but she kind of fits a mold that is popular in elementary schools, period, among literature, and it's that awkward girl that just doesn't, or awkward kid in period that just doesn't fit in. That
like Amelia Rose.
Yeah, and or even Pippi Longstocking. You can go back far enough as a character, right? And she, in her own book, I still find her annoying, but she fits this very well. And if you had a teacher reading the story, doing voices or whatever, all the kids would definitely enjoy this.
So comics aren't usually read out loud, though. They're more
no,
privately.
They're not. But sometimes they are.
Yeah.
In school specifically, nothing really strong stands out to me, but I do remember some of my teachers reading comics.
So
very few. They preferred the obviously picture books with words on it,
right?
But they would show the pictures and everything. Especially now we got projectors that can capture the pictures. It makes it even easier to share it with everybody.
That's a good point, because normally comics don't lend themselves well to a what's called a chaperoned reading experience like picture books are. Neostar's been blown up chat a bit. I've seen pieces of different Moon Girl books. She's consistently obnoxious and condescending in her book as she is in others. Okay, so the example I wanted to bring up that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Sometimes, I haven't read that in Moon Girl, but sometimes that's funny. Once again, that was Pippi Longstocking's whole shtick.
Yeah.
Let me point out where it was obnoxious to the point of being trash. Here, I'm going to get on my soapbox and say something's garbage trash.
Okay.
Inhumans versus X-Men.
Okay. That once again, that's not the book being so. That's a book that's being made for you
with a different writer taking care of the character,
which is even worse. I'm talking about my problems with the character. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not talking about specifically that book. I'm talking about the character.
We're having a problem with a character that may not be in keeping with the way it's actually being written.
Well, according to Neostar,
I can confirm. Let him get on his soapbox because I agree with Neostar. It is basically the same character.
Okay.
She just works better in her own book.
I love how recent our flip on the contrarian moments. This is really funny. You're defending Moon Girl.
No, I'm defending. I'm just pointing out your ignorance. That's all.
I'm not ignorant on this.
No, you're not ignorant about that book, but where it fits in the greater context, where you obviously, when you already said you hadn't read.
But I'm not ignorant because Metal backed me up, so I'm actually right. Or I'm correct.
You could be accidentally right.
I'm accidentally right.
Accidentally right.
So there we go. Accidentally correct. That's gonna put that in my Twitter bio. Or predictively correct, because I predicted this. It wasn't like I was accidentally. I predicted it. Anyway, so the point is that this is a character that
a prophet over here.
Yeah,
channeling Richard Meyer.
No, don't you dare.
Accidentally correct. That's his entire career.
Inhumans, you just don't want me to get to my example. So Inhumans versus X-Men has this scene, and it's we have a Forge, whose mutant power is basically being accidentally correct about things.
Yes.
Speak of the devil. Forge is basically intuitively right about designing stuff. So he's designing a machine to destroy, I believe, the Terrigen mist cloud that's going to kill all the X-Men, because that's what Inhumans versus X-Men was about. The Terrigen.
Because that's something they invented for the story. But go ahead.
The Terrigen mists. He has this machine design, and Moon Girl, who is this character that they market obnoxiously as, I'm just the smartest in the entire Marvel universe. And so which is something that we're told. We're not shown this in a convincing way. We are told that she is smarter than everybody. So in this scene,
there's like a chart that they show, and her like IQ is above Reed Richards,
which is
for
just
some reason.
Just retardedly stupid. So here's how they decided to try and show how she's smarter. She takes out a stick, and she then draws in the dirt, not an actual like real like blueprint, okay, but she just draws like a picture in the dirt. And she says, "I fixed your machine design, Forge." And it's like, it's indicative of so many things that are wrong with comic books, but this character in particular. Because when you have a character who's supposed to be smart, but the character is written by someone who is only a midwit at best, a person who is not very smart can't really write a smart person. And so if you actually were a super genius, there would be, blueprints of some considerable depth. There would be a lot more probably math. And yet, from what I recall about this panel, if I'm not misremembering it, she basically just, and it was, if it were comedy, hey, draw a picture, I fixed your design, I would have laughed. But Forge looks at this like drawing in the dirt, and she's like, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what a genius." And I'm like, I just like, my eyes rolled so far to the back of my head that I killed myself and I am now a ghost. And that's what they've done with that character. And it's just, it's the worst. It's trash.
Yeah, okay. But first of all, any story involving the concept of Terrigen Mist being a weapon or dangerous to mutants is already trash. Okay. So you can't make anything good out of it to begin with. Just burn the book and walk on.
Yeah, well, so there was something I was going to say. You can actually write intelligent people if you aren't that intelligent, which this is not what they did. If you are close to intelligent people, if you're used to being around, you can write a story from the perspective of how other people interpret intelligent people, and because you have a model to base off of. Sure. But none of these people have intelligent friends, so that throws that out the window there.
And one of the things that comes down, that's definitely a factor. The other part of it is that the difference between intelligence and non-intelligence is not, it's processing.
It's subtle.
It's subtle. It's processing speed. Yeah. So like a less intelligent person can still come up with the right answer. It just takes them longer.
Yes.
The problem you have here is that there's nobody pointing out this is the wrong answer. And the editor should be saying, this is the wrong answer. Go back to the drawing board till you get the right answer. Oh, and by the way, I need this strip done, in 3 hours. So
I'm just pointing out the fact of why I hate that character and how that character has been used for a very particular agenda. That it was an agenda when they decided to make Moon Girl the smartest ever in the Marvel universe. Take that, Reed Richards. And then in
fairness, Reed Richards has been stupid since Civil War.
Oh gosh.
Probably a little bit before that.
He's been unwise. There is a difference between intelligence and wisdom, so we do have to draw that line.
Yeah, but making a Thor robot is on its face stupid.
Well, I'm not going to argue. In defense of Civil War.
Stupid.
But the idea of the fact that, like, I remember one of Reed's first appearances. I don't remember which one it was, but one of his first moments, like we're talking Kirby era, and he holds up a jar and he's like, "I was trying to invent life and I got it to last for 7 seconds. Here's the jar of the Reed in his infancy essentially was like playing God with his intellect. And Moon Girl scratching things in the mud and going, "I'm a genius," is so patently offensive to me that it makes me never want to buy a Marvel comic ever again.
Well, I was already there, so
I know you were, but it's that sort of thing. So yeah,
I'm just waiting for the arc where they just the Illuminati still is a thing, but they just replace all of the people with just Moon Girl.
Oh, that'd be. Oh my gosh, where's Moon Girl on the Illuminati? Is she and Captain
just
Marvel can run the interstellar prison?
She kicked all the other ones out because they were not intelligent enough for her.
Well, no, they would have room for what's his face, Amadeus Cho, right? He gets a pass.
Oh, and Riri.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Gosh, that's like the worst. That's the worst comic ever.
But you know what? It would make sense because the Illuminati are horrible people, but they took people who weren't horrible and made them horrible. At least now we can start with actual horrible people.
So I'd like to share off one of my favorite panels about accidental intelligence ever in a comic that I happened to write.
I remember this scene.
Yeah, this was a fun scene to write.
I remember this scene.
Also, the one really irritating thing about this particular scene was like I had to go back and like figure out all the formulas from my.
So
like, I haven't done physics of any kind in 25 years.
So here's the thing I like right here, and this is already what makes it like 100 times better than what Marvel tends to do now. So in your version of the scene, what you did is you have a character and you have some science. It could be in math. It could be correct. It could be off base. You know, who knows?
It's pretty close to correct.
Well, we would need a physicist here to confirm.
No, it's pretty close to correct.
Okay.
I actually have to do physics formulas and stuff all the time for my writing because I am anal about how things work in there. And I've even had to figure out how to like bend physics to work in like superliminal and faster light situations because physics don't actually work well there.
I don't know enough to confirm, but I'll say this, but setting that aside, actually, the part that I like here is the fact that you have the character who's, you know, it's kind of funny. We have this theme now of accidentally correct, right? So we have this character who's accidentally correct. He says, I don't understand, but I'm remembering things I didn't know I knew, but I know what to do. So we have the character and he's able to have his moment of confidence, but he's not saying, here's how this scene would go in current year Marvel writing. Oh my gosh, I'm totally gonna science, because I love the math and the science. I totally know what I'm gonna do, and I'm totally gonna win because I love the science. Like, and there would probably be about 10 more balloons about how much. Oh my gosh. I'll be trying to think what else would be like. Yes, Queen Slay, just about yay science, because that's what we get. That's the power of math. Am I right?
You're actually only missing really one important thing here,
which is what
the shear force of the lance itself breaking. So there's going to be a differential of losing some of your force between that. So you actually have to be faster than what is actually being proposed here, just that's slightly. True. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, back to my awful point. The character would not only be confident, she would have it would obviously be a she. She would be like utterly pretentious, contemptuous, and then there would be these like, again, these quippy things that no real scientist like thinks in. Real scientists just go in there, or engineers go in and solve the problem and do it, and they're happy about it. But the whole like, that's the power of math. It's like, no, oh my gosh, and that's what dumb people think smart people are like.
That's why I hated that Big Bang Theory show.
Oh yeah,
science.
It was one of those things. It was exactly
like compliment.
It's exactly what dumb people think smart people are like.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we have now.
You don't know me.
So yeah. So that's my.
I preferred IT Crowd. I thought that was a much better show for talking about smart people because smart people are just as goofy as anybody else. You know, most of them are. You know, they have a specialty. Or, you know, you think faster because of processing speed and stuff like that. But then not only did it show how accurately less intelligent people view people with specialties, but they also showed the other way around pretty accurately while in a genuinely comedic setting.
IT Crowd's
but that's British humor for you, so you know.
IT Crowd's pretty good. I do have to admit it did fall off a bit because eventually it just became like goofy silliness.
Yes,
it lost its root in some of those things.
That's the issue with the writers because they are very goofy, silly people, and they couldn't not just go back to their comfort place after a while. If you watch anything else that group does, like Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and that too, like
Father Ted. I love Father Ted.
Father Ted's great. They just all of it's the same, but with different characters.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was the other thing I noticed is eventually it's like, oh, this is just it was Graham. What's his face? What's the creator of that? He did
I
Father.
can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's based Graham Lineham or something. And it's like it's just his type of show, and he just kind of makes the same show over and over again with different people in the roles. And so IT Crowd is just like Father Ted. It's just you have different people doing different
and
stuff.
they're all intelligent people who work on the shows if you watch any of their stuff, but they have a comfort spot that they just fall back into after a while.
Right.
So great comment from the chat. Neo says Big Bang Theory was just a way to make nerd culture palatable to middle-aged housewives.
Yeah, that's probably
It's all marketing.
That's 100% true. Also, I want to point out another accidentally intelligent panel from the story before that one was Chad is trying to this character in the back has built a teleportation ray that doesn't work, and so Chad says, "We have this. Have a look. Adjust this. Twist this. Add some chewing gum around this wire as an EMI shield. That should fix it." How did you do that? I've been working on it for 6 months. I can't explain any of it. I just need this stuff. Is that cool?
See, I feel like, honestly, if you wanted to do that Moon Girl character better, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
You should give her the intuitive power. So she's like, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is kind of how you should fix it. And if that were her power and that's the way they played her off, I'd probably accept it way better. It's the fact that she has to be, I'm super intelligent, the science, and it's like, I'm smarter than Reed Richards. And it's just like, piss off, little 8-year-old.
Well, a lot of people are like just intuitive savants where they're good at things and they can't really explain it because it works in their head. They don't have the language to explain what they're doing, but they can do it.
And they're not necessarily inventive geniuses. They could maybe fix something, but they couldn't necessarily invent something, because that's a different type of genius. To invent something that doesn't exist, as opposed to I can fix that thing there intuitively that you already have, and I'm a savant at that.
My wife's uncle is an engineer, and he's a really, really smart dude. He decided he wanted to build some metal shelving for his garage that was like welded metal shelving. But the shelving kept as it would cool, as the metal would cool, it kept bending up at like instead of being a 90-degree angle, it would bend up. So it would point up, right? Because as the metal would cool and shrink. And so what
with
he
the
did
convection of the hot air rising through the
and the coefficient of cooling, as one side would cool more quickly than the other side.
Obviously, that would happen if you actually sat there and worked out the physics ahead of time. But nobody's going to sit there and work out the physics ahead of time.
He did. As an engineer, he did it. So he knew what angle he needed to weld it on so that when it cooled, it would cool flat.
Nice.
So he did the math for figuring out the coefficient of cooling for whatever grade of steel he used to build these shelves out of. And I was like, this is amazing. And he's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. And I was like, no, it's a really big deal. He said, nobody's ever done this. And he's like, yeah, no one's ever thought of this. And he said, I'll bet there's 100 welders that just know how to do it because they've just been building on the high steel and stuff for their whole lives. And they already know it just intuitively. But I don't have that kind of skill. So I figured out the math and made it work. And I was like, you should publish a paper on this. This is amazing research. And he's like, nah, I'm retired.
Yeah.
I respect that.
I was like, but Dick, you just discovered something that he's like, yeah, other people can figure it out too, though, if they want. Okay, Dick.
Yeah. I had a moment like that sort of in my comics. Like I always leave it very subtle. I want people to know that I'm doing the math. I just don't want to show them the math or anything like that. So in chapter 4 of X Dynamis Chaos Fighting for Fall, there's a moment where they're talking, because I rate all these characters since they're human by basically joules of the amount of energy that they have either put out or could take at their peak, right? Like whatever they've done, the greatest feat, the energy coefficient for it. And at one point it's like, oh yeah, but I mean, even if you wanted to knock him out, this guy who absorbs energy into the fat of his body, you'd have to hit him in the head with the same energy of a Mack truck going 80, right? And the reason that math is because the other way around is I wanted to drop this stone obelisk on a character's head. It's the same obelisk that's in the mall of the mall that I grew up going to, and I've always wanted to drop that obelisk since I was a little kid. So I'm like, how much force would be behind that if it crashed on top of somebody? So I started with that end, and I came up with something that was near equivalent that somebody might actually say out loud. And a lot of people use like the cab of a truck going a certain speed as just like an off the cuff way to describe the amount of force something has. And I kind of tied that together. And if anybody actually were to run the math, they'd figure out, oh, he ran the math before making this line in the first place.
So
I told you I'm really anal with my
I just
stuff.
made that stuff up because those don't exist.
All right.
But for the jousting, that's real math.
So we have Neostar saying Nadia Pym is an even worse example of the trope of the pretentious science characters. Her comic is pretty much science for dilettantes. Intersectionality is truly antithetical to creative writing. Yeah, good word choice.
Well, I think we hit all of the questions. It's 10:14. I have an assignment that's due in 45 minutes, which is not a problem. But I should probably call it a day. It's been another 3-hour stream. This is getting to be a bad habit.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for coming on last minute. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you were already sort of planning it to this, but next week it's the Doug Tenaple Appreciation Society. We are going to be reading and reviewing Ghostopolis. And I think after that we're going to be talking Superman, but I'm not 100% on that. I gotta confirm some stuff. So, and then do we have any idea who the next CCC is going to be, Twitless? I don't remember who we talked about to, or if we've even made that contact yet.
We have not, so we need to talk about that soon.
Figure it out. I know that Scott with the flock was talking about wanting in on that action, but I'm not sure when works for him.
Yep.
Or who would be a good pairing for him.
Also, chat, if you have any ideas, obviously, let us know.
If you guys know creators who you want us to review their work together, give us a holla on Facebook or Twitter, or in the comments section, and we can try to follow up with those guys. Definitely. So I do know that earlier Evie mentioned Jason Brubaker, who I've never met or talked to or anything, but that's an idea. So yeah, there you go. Man, that's it. That's all I've got. So
oh, wait. There was an important thing that we missed. Scrolling back through. Very important. Acceptance of Joy said that I have an objectively calming voice.
I do think that's probably true.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably true. I also did stop the music earlier because my system was starting to lag again. I think maybe it doesn't have enough RAM in this machine.
Well, that's okay. I know a website where you can download some.
What?
I'll send you a link.
That's not how RAM works.
Download more RAM.
I beg to differ.
It's okay. Once 3D printers become good enough, or we can actually get like transmitters and transistors and stuff in there, then we could just download more RAM by 3D printing it to put into your computer.
That's true. Actually, that someday that will happen.
Yeah.
As long as you have,
and then it'll be a meme that nobody understands unless you were old enough.
So. Neo says you guys can review my recent comic if you'd like. It's short, but I can use critique.
Well, again, CCC is less about critique and more about us enjoying and talking. We could make minor critiques, but
we might be able to do that as a separate thing, though, too. So
that's fair. Yeah.
Wouldn't necessarily have to be part of that. I do know that, like, for example, I dropped in the CCC group a few months ago my a story that I did with Tony Sizzle, and nobody commented on it at all. I don't know if anyone even read it.
Which one was that?
It was the His Majesty's Highwayman is what it's called.
I might have missed that.
Yeah, I think I might have too.
Let's see.
I'll take a scroll back up and look for it.
Yeah, it's way up there. It was like December or whatever.
Okay.
So
Oh, that would explain it. I was in the middle of December was finals for me, and I was writing like 50 pages of, of stuff.
December was moving month for me.
Yeah, that's why. Normally, I would have read it, but if it's December, like I said, I think
it's
I
a
wrote
little 8-pager that I wrote. Edwardian. No, not Edwardian.
Well, see, that could be a fun club. Like after getting a couple more down, is even one that may not necessarily need the creators around. We could just find like a bunch of shorts to do back to back, just like to appreciate some shorts that were written.
Yeah,
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Good.
But yeah, we're gonna put a I don't know. I'm gonna end the stream. So hey guys, listen. Next week we're gonna read some comics. So you all out there in internet land, do yourself a favor and read some comics. And we will catch you all next time around. What the heck is this
Yeah,
link?
I saw it too.
Oh my god. I'm not gonna click that.
That looks like bait. Download more ram.com.
sorry.
So anyway,
It's probably a Rickroll.
probably a Rickroll. The funniest kind of thing that I've heard, and I got to give him credit for one funny thing, truly funny thing. EVS's 2008 crack or 2018 crack. This better not be porn. That's a genuinely funny comment.
Oh yeah, I say that all the time. Like when somebody's trying to show me something IRL, they'll show the phone and be like, "This better not be porn."
Yeah, that's genuinely funny. Good night, guys.
All right, night. Thanks for coming.